At the very beginning, we see a young boy arrive at the airport along with his supposed parents. The father is a bit overenthusiastic and ends up talking about how the air in South Korea feels different, seemingly implying they are from a different country. The mother quickly steps in and tells her husband that he will be getting in trouble for speaking in such a manner. Meanwhile, the boy, stoic, refers to the supposed parents as comrades and asks them if they really need to wear such strange clothing, even though they are dressed normally according to South Korean standards. The woman also steps in and tells her supposed son to also not talk like this, or they'll be in trouble. Later, as they travel in a taxi, the man sees the beauty of Seoul City. He couldn't help but be amazed by how tall and amazing the buildings were. The taxi driver smiles and says that it must have been a while since they've last visited Seoul, hence the shock. The man, naive, tells the driver that he has never come to Seoul before. But before he can say anything more, the woman steps in by slapping the guy straight across the face, knocking him out in the process. However, she guises it as her asking her husband to look at the buildings. The driver finds that quite strange, but the woman keeps her smile, while the boy maintains a stoic and bored face. Afterwards, they arrive at their destination, a huge building complex. The woman really loves how it looks and she couldn't be more happy to live there. Meanwhile, the boy scouts out the nearby area to understand that it was all clear. All clear until a security guard came in to ask them who they'd come to visit. He also makes it abundantly clear that he won't be letting them in without them showing a visitor's pass. This is when the man reveals that they'll be going to the very top, where the biggest apartment is located. That's their house. This shocks the security guard, but the woman further adds that they've moved in here about a month ago. Still, the security guard finds this quite absurd. Next up, at the Seoul International High School, the teacher announces to the class that they have a new transfer student. The transfer student is the main character from earlier. People are already talking about how they've got a new transfer student and not the usual exchange student. Anyway, the teacher informs the class about how this boy has been placed in the advanced section of students from the get-go, so that should explain what kind of guy he is. She asks them all to get along with him. The boy stands still, so the teacher asks him if he is not going to introduce himself to everyone. The boy maintains his silence for a while, before he introduces himself as Kang Jian. A beautiful girl immediately finds his stoic nature to be attractive and totally her type. Girls already start chit-chatting about him. Kang Jian then goes ahead and takes his seat, which draws the attention of the few delinquents in the class. Following this, the teacher asks Kang Jian if he is sure that he can keep up with the class. After all, they were already in the second semester of the second curriculum year. But Kang Jian seemed unfazed. Seeing this, the teacher puts out a pretty complicated mathematical problem and asks Kang Jian to come to the board and solve it. But Kang Jian doesn't bother and tells the teacher the answer right away. The teacher is shocked by his confidence. The class nerd also puts the problem on paper and solves it to find out that Kang Jian was indeed correct. This shocks everyone. The teacher is stunned by how he managed to solve such an advanced problem in his head, and in such a short time. The girl who found him attractive now finds him even more attractive, and now all eyes are on Kang Jian. But he couldn't care less, and seemed determined for something else. He thinks about how he will absolutely complete the mission given to him. A flashback of a young Kang Jian being trained in a remote place far away. He would go through rigorous physical and academic training under the supervision of a military officer. As he grew up, Kang Jian started receiving more advanced weapon training with knives and guns. Eventually, it came to a point where he became very good at all sectors of the training. For his final test, Kang Jian had to take on his trainer in a fight where knives could be used. The fight began, and Kang Jian showed his improvements. Even though the officer still seemingly had the upper hand, as he landed a knife cut on Kang Jian, it was also evident that the boy could now go toe-to-toe with him. So, Kang Jian was promoted to a military officer himself in the North Korean army. There, his unit, the 7th one, was given a mission. The mission would have him go to South Korea for at least 10 years. There, he would invade the upper echelon of the society and build a strong economical and influential background. Afterwards, he would need to wait for the orders from the higher up to execute the next part. In said mission, he was assigned the two other comrades, who were to act as his parents to keep the espionage hidden. Kang Jian accepted the mission, and so they were sent to South Korea. Back in the current time, Kang Jian's comrades were in the house that they've rented out for them. Both seem worried and wonder if Kang Jian would fall for this mission. The woman, who seemed more worried, thought there was no point in rushing into stuff. The man hugged her and told her to not worry much, and that the best thing about this is them getting out of the hell that they were in. Next up, at school, Kang Jian is surrounded by 3 enthusiastic girls. They throw several questions at him, asking why did he transfer at this time of the year, if he is a foreigner, and if his father is a diplomat from the US or UK. All these questions overwhelm Kang Jian, as he doesn't have much to say. Just then, the girl who first showed interest in Kang Jian arrives. All the other girls quickly step away from her, and the girl comes forward and introduces herself as Lee Era. Kang Jian is reminded of the research he did on her through a document that was sent to him. Just then, his father for the mission had come to deliver even more documents for him to research. He was told to look up these people and develop relationships with them. His father also called him out for his stoicism and told him to act like a normal citizen. Even though Kang Jian didn't like that, he had to comply. Back in real time, Kang Jian recognizes Lee Era as the daughter of the owner of the Samjong Corporation. She is his #1 target. Samjong Corporation is the biggest in South Korea and one of the biggest in the world. So, he was instructed to maintain a great relationship with her, so that they can later use Samjong Corporation's secrets to their advantage. So, Kang Jian tries his best to talk back to her. But this is when Lee Era puts her phone forward and asks him to give her his Instagram ID. Kang Jian is shocked by this, as he has no idea what Instagram is. Lee Era is surprised to learn that he doesn't have an Insta and wonders if he is one of those Facebook guys. Regardless, she just asks him for his phone number. But this also leaves Kang Jian stunned, because he doesn't have that either. This makes Lee Era question what kind of a person he is, as only a caveman would not have a phone. Unimpressed, she turns around and leaves, leaving Kang Jian petrified, and the delinquents laughing at his expense. After school, Kang Jian is once again left overwhelmed, as he sees expensive car after expensive car line up at the escort to take the students home. As he checks out the cars, a sophisticated girl walks right past her. Getting a glimpse of her immediately makes Kang Jian realize that she is the biggest target of them all. But the way he stares at her draws the attention of one of the giant bodyguards standing there. Kang Jian looks away as the girl gets on her limousine and leaves. Soon after, Lee Era follows by getting on her Rolls-Royce and being driven off. Kang Jian watches all this unfold when suddenly, the red-haired delinquents push him by the face to move him out of the way. The delinquent makes fun of Kang Jian and also tells him that he gets on his nerves. The giant bodyguard then escorts the guy to his car and takes him away. As Kang Jian looks on, pissed off, a guy, Jang Dongwoo, approaches him from behind. The guy tells him that a lot of rich people attend the school, so it's common for such a scene to occur every day. Kang Jian recognizes him as a 3-star target on the documents. His grandfather is CEO of the Hansen law firm, his father the chief of the Seoul prosecutor's office, and his mother is a judge at the Seoul High Court. Dongwoo himself is being slated as the next prosecutor general. Dongwoo asks Kang Jian if he doesn't have to ride back home, and if so, he offers to give him a lift. Kang Jian considers this, but his face makes it seem like he is not interested. So Dongwoo tells him that it's fine if he doesn't want to. But Kang Jian very awkwardly agrees to take up the offer, which pleases Dongwoo. Once inside the car, Dongwoo asks Kang Jian where he lives, to which Kang Jian says he lives at the Banpo Blue Tower. Dongwoo says that it's a very nice place and instructs his driver to take a stop there. But the silence once again takes over. Dongwoo awkwardly breaks the silence by asking Kang Jian about the math problem he solved, and asks him how he did. Kang Jian gave him the side-eye, which makes Dongwoo tell him that he is just asking because he found that impressive. He then talks about how he is not good at maths, so Kang Jian suggests he tutors him. This shocks Dongwoo, So Kang Jian reiterates that he is willing to teach him how to solve complicated problems. This makes Dong Wu very happy. Kang Jian is also pleased at his own social skills, as the mission was going quite well. Just then, Dong Wu asks him if it is really true that he doesn't have Instagram or a phone for that fact, leaving Kang Jian embarrassed. Meanwhile, in her car, Li Era instructs her secretary, Yang, to investigate the new transfer student. The secretary takes her order and asks her if he should tell the intelligence unit to run a deep search into his background. She says that's not necessary. She just wants to know if Kang Jian is someone worthy enough to hang out with her. Yang tells her he will have it ready by the night. Next up, Kang Jian reaches home, where he is nicely greeted by his mother for the mission with a smile. Her behavior shocks Kang Jian, but she tells him that he should call her mother and tell her that he is back home from school in a familial way. Kang Jian feels a bit embarrassed but ends up repeating what she told him to with a blushing appearing on his cheeks. Following this, he asks his mother why she is behaving like this, to which she tells him to go to his room first. She pushes him into his room, and Kang Jian is surprised to see that they've decorated his room like a rich schoolboy's. He now has a laptop, tablet, and a phone. He also has a nice bed and a keyboard to play music with. Kang Jian is taken aback by this, but asks if it is really okay to waste the operation's funds for these things. His mother tells him that it is absolutely necessary and that he needs to remember that they're supposed to be a rich family. Reluctant, Kang Jian picks up the phone that he was given and asks his mother if the Instagram thing can be used on this. Mother isn't sure either, but his father steps in and assures Kang Jian that he can teach him about that. Later that night, Li Era is seen on a night jog, where she is sweating it out when she runs into Secretary Yang. He delivers the investigation report as ordered by Li Era, and it was about Kang Jian's father. In the report, he is known as Steve Kang, a second-generation Korean-American businessman. He is the CEO of 11 Coins, one of the top 5 cryptocurrencies in the world. His estimated net worth is around 30 billion won. Furthermore, his business has seen huge rise in Japan and Korea through security networking. The main branch of the company is in the USA, but recently China has also shown interest in the company. Yang asks Li Era if he should dive deeper into Steve Kang to gather more information. But Li Era tells him there is no need for that, as she can tell by this that Kang Jian is someone who is barely, but still worthy of hanging out with her. The next day at school, something is different about Kang Jian. After all, today he has his own mobile phone on his desk and he can't help but feel confident because of this. He waits for Li Era to look at him, and when she does, he proudly flaunts his phone to her. Seeing this makes Li Era smirk. Following this, Dong Wu comes around and asks Kang Jian if he has been on his phone this whole time, to which he says yes. Just then, the two delinquents enter the scene. The red-haired one puts his arm across Dong Wu's shoulder and asks him if he is already close with Kang Jian. Dong Wu says that he is, because Kang Jian is going to tutor him in maths. The red-haired dude says it's fine, but tells Dong Wu to go away, because he has some personal business with Kang Jian. Dong Wu reluctantly makes way, leaving Kang Jian with the two delinquents. Kang Jian already knows that the red-haired guy is 4-star priority Go Jin Suk, the CEO Jae Ram, and the son of National Assembly member Go Young Chon. His father is very influential and is the front-runner to be the next president of the country. The other guy is 2-star priority Huang Woo-young, the son of Daejeong Company's CEO. Their company is in the top 30 in the country and is an international name in the sports industry. Knowing this, Kang Jian plays it smart by smiling at them and asking if he should tutor them too. This annoys Jin Suk, who asks Woo Young to teach Kang Jian a lesson on how things are done here, and walks away. Woo Young then confronts Kang Jian and firmly grabs his shoulder. He tries to intimidate Kang Jian by telling him about how there is a rule here, which tells everyone to know their roles. Kang Jian gets pissed off from the way he grabs him, and imagines a scenario where he uses his alternate hand to strike Woo Young fatally in the neck and make an example out of it. But that is something he can't do here. Woo Young keeps asking him if he understood what he told him, but Kang Jian just slowly whispers that he needs to stay unnoticed. Woo Young is confused by what he is saying, But Kang Jian responds by pulling Wu Young's hand off him and grabbing it so hard that it literally shakes him up. Wu Young is shocked by it, and Kang Jian once again puts on a smile and asks him if this is how they make friends here. This also surprises Jin Suk. Wu Young swats Kang Jian's hand away and says that he is in serious need of a beating. Wu Young loads up a punch and is about to throw it when Kang Jian notices a security camera in the room. This reminds of his previous discussion with his father, who told him that all of South Korea is filled with security cameras. He then shows how he has hacked into the entire school's security system and shows him how he has access to it all. He also boasts about it being no big deal for him to hack into these things. Seeing this made Kang Jian happy and hype up his comrade as the best hacker from North Korea. But he is told to not call him a comrade and fix his way of talking to his father for the mission. He also tells Kang Jian that because there are security cameras everywhere, he can't do anything violent and draw attention to himself. Keeping that in mind, Kang Jian decides to only dodge the punch from Wu Young, and he retaliates by pushing his bench into Wu Young, creating separation. Angered, Wu Young wants to continue, but Lee Era intervenes and says that it is enough. She asks Wu Young if it is really necessary to stoop so low. She depends on Kang Jian, saying he doesn't know the rules and regulations of their place. Jin Suk chimes in and says that if he doesn't know, he needs to be educated. But Lee Era shuts him down and tells them to stop this right at that moment. Wu Young threatens to see Kang Jian again when they're alone, but Kang Jian is excited for the prospect of getting himself alone. Afterwards, Kang Jian thinks about how Jin Suk is listed as a top priority for their mission, so he wonders how he should go about taming him. Following on, the English class begins, where the teacher is happy to see a new student. Kang Jian is not really interested in it though. The teacher asks Kang Jian how he is faring at the native language classes. Kang Jian replies by telling her that he is doing fine in English. The teacher is taken aback by his pronunciation, so she asks him where he studied before coming here. He says he went to a school in New York and that he came here because of his father's business. The teacher is totally impressed by her, so she says that everyone can improve their English by talking to him and that he has a fluent American accent. Kang Jian feels proud, while Lee Era looks on impressed. Meanwhile, the delinquent were seething in jealousy. After the class, Kang Jian is once again surrounded by those three girls, who talk about how he has a better accent than the teacher, and ask him why he didn't tell them that he was from New York yesterday. Kang Jian simply shows them his new phone, which is then noticed by Lee Era. She checks to see that it is a phone from their Samjong company, so she approves of it. Kang Jian is delighted, as his mission was going all according to plan. He also tells her that he has Instagram. She checks his ID to see how he has a picture in a lot of the world's famous places with his family. She thinks they have quite a warm family. Kang Jian is happy it went according to plan. He expected no less from North Korea's best computer expert than to make such convincing fake images. After school, cars line up at the front gate as usual. Kang Jian was waiting for his own car to show up, as his father did tell him that there is a new car out in the market, which he will be bringing for Kang Jian. As he keeps waiting, the girl who rides the limousine goes past him. Moments later, so does Lee Era. But before leaving, Lee Era turns back and bids farewell to Kang Jian. This pleased Kang Jian, as it meant that he was on the right path, because Lee Era was interested in him. Right then, Huang Wu Young grabs his shoulder and tells Kang Jian to come with them in their car. Kang Jian looks around to see that it's him and Go Jin Suk. He thinks this is a great opportunity to get close to them for the sake of his mission. So, Kang Jian asks them where they were headed. Wu Young replied by telling him to follow them while he is still asking nicely. Kang Jian obliges and decides to follow them, because it is integral to him completing the mission. Just then, a flashy and fast red car comes speeding in and overtakes the cars that were standing. The hood soon opens up to reveal it is Steve Kang Jian's father for the mission. His flashiness stuns everyone, including Kang Jian. He loudly declares how he is Kang Jian's father and that he is here to pick his son up. Before he could make more of a scene, Kang Jian steps forward and tells him about the situation he has on hand. Hearing this, Steve declares his happiness to know that his son has made more friends, and that he will be going in their car. He tells Kang Jian that he will be seeing him at home, before speeding off from there. Afterwards, the two delinquents, annoyed by the flashiness, stared at Kang Jian with malice, with Jin Suk saying that he is in dire need of being taught a lesson. Inside the car, Kang Jian shares the back seat with Wu Young, while wondering just where they were headed to. Eventually, they arrive at the TJ Sports Building. They get out of the car, and Jin Suk tells his bodyguard to go home alone, and that he will be coming later. The bodyguard swiftly refuses, as he has been ordered to stay by Jin Suk's side at all places beside the school. Kang Jian notes down this bit of information in his head. Afterwards, as he sees everyone inside the building, Kang Jian follows suit. Inside, they go to a MMA training facility where fighters train and spar. The trainer greets Wu Young with respect, and Wu Young asks him if he cleared the third cage, as Wu Young had instructed. The trainer says that he did, and Wu Young instructs him to not let anyone in while he uses the cage. The trainer then sneakily advises Kang Jian to apologize to Wu Young, and assures him that he will be calling an ambulance beforehand to make sure Kang Jian gets taken to the hospital quickly. Kang Jian is confused by this, but his attention goes to Wu Young, who yells at him to come and join him. Afterwards, Wu Young undresses from his school uniform and puts on MMA fighting gear. Kang Jian watches him do so, and he was a bit confused. Jin Suk, who was up at the fan stands, comments about how this is the first time in a long while that someone has come here with an expression like that of Kang Jian's. Kang Jian looks back up at him and asks him if he wants Kang Jian to spar with Wu Young. This makes Jin Suk laugh out loud, as he finds Kang Jian's statement ridiculous. He tells Kang Jian that it doesn't matter if it is a sparring session or something else. If he understands what he is getting into, Kang Jian should just sign the contract in front of him. Kang Jian doesn't know which contract he is talking about, so Wu Young shows it to him. The context was an agreement between both parties for the sparring session. If one were to get injured or harmed badly during the fight, the other party wouldn't be held for criminal or civil cases. Reading this, Kang Jian asks Jin Suk if he really wants him to sign this up. Jin Suk replies by asking Kang Jian if he feels frightened. If so, he should get down and bark like a dog to apologize. Only then will Jin Suk let this slide. However, Kang Jian didn't pay any attention to this. Jin Suk is taken aback by Kang Jian's behavior and judges him as a true weirdo. Before signing, Kang Jian asks if the place holds any recording cameras, confusing everyone. He then starts signing as he asks if he really needs to fight. Jin Suk tries to warn Kang Jian, asking if he doesn't understand simple Korean after being in foreign land for so long. He states how Wu Young takes down national champions by himself. He would simply tear Kang Jian to shreds in the fight. But Kang Jian just asks Wu Young to hurry up and sign up as well, while he starts adjusting his school uniform. Inside the cage, Wu Young looked relaxed and calm, while Kang Jian put on the gloves with his usual stoic expression. This makes Wu Young think that Kang Jian had frozen up in fear, making him laugh. Wu Young then approaches Kang Jian to start the fight. As he is coming, Kang Jian wonders what he can do. He thinks about throwing an overhand right, but fears that it'll break Wu Young's teeth, so that option is out. He thinks about dodging Wu Young's first punch and goes for a body hook, but he fears that'll end up causing internal damage. He obviously can't poke him in the eyes or kick him in the nuts. Even a head kick is out of the question, as it might break his neck or dislocate his jaw. A leg kick might even cause a broken tibia, so he doesn't want to do that either. So, Kang Jian wonders just what he can do to teach Wu Young a lesson without harming him too much. As he thinks, Wu Young had already arrived and he threw a right hook at Kang Jian, which he swiftly avoided. Wu Young immediately followed it up with a left uppercut, but Kang Jian very easily dodged this too. This shocks the bodyguard and Jin Suk watching on, and Wu Young is forced to shuffle away from Kang Jian to recollect himself. Wu Young asks Kang Jian if he has been secretly training till now, to which Kang Jian says nothing. His silence annoys Wu Young, who asks him if he has suddenly gone mute. Kang Jian still maintains his silence, and this pissed off Wu Young and enticed him to charge at Kang Jian again. But as he loads up his punch, he is met with a lightning-quick slap, which wobbles Wu Young. The bodyguard and Jin Suk are both stunned, while it just angers Wu Young even more. He once again looks to charge at him, but this time Kang Jian slaps him with his right hand, halting him once again. Insulted, he curses at Kang Jian and tries once again to charge, but a third slap on his left cheek drops Wu Young. The bodyguard and Jin Suk were left flabbergasted, as Kang Jian declared that he will need the fight without causing any serious harm. He was then ready to take his exit, but Jin Suk told him to wait. Jin Suk then came downstairs and immediately appointed Kang Jian as his new right-hand man, confusing Kang Jian, but he reminded Kang Goen of who his father is. He then told his bodyguard how Kang Jian, with his brute strength, is a perfect fit for the job. Jin Suk subsequently invites Kang Jian to come with him to a restaurant for them to celebrate Kang Jian's victory. Kang Jian was a bit overwhelmed but also happy because everything was going right according to his plans. After that, Kang Jian returns home, tired and uninterested. His parents asked him if he made friends today, to which he said that he did. His mother offered him to join them for dinner, but he told her that he ate with his friend and that he will be sleeping early today. This leaves his parents worried, but he goes inside his room anyway, crashes out on his bed, and thinks about what had happened in the restaurant. The place was very lavish and beautiful, and Jin Suk boasted about it being the place his family usually ate at. He told Kang Jian to eat as much as he wanted, so Kang Jian tried out the steak. The steak was so good that Kang Jian couldn't help but make faces. This made Jin Suk laugh. But to Kang Jian, he couldn't believe that this was the same Jin Suk who was actively trying to pick on him since he joined school. As things settled down, Jin Suk told him how he is the new right-hand man now, but the duties aren't anything special. He just needs to beat down anyone who tries to mess with him, although he doubts anyone will try that now. Kang Jian tells him that he doesn't like picking on weak people, but Jin Suk assures him that weak people wouldn't even dare to try to talk with him, let alone mess. Kang Jian asks about Jang Dongwu, as he was talking pretty casually to Jin Suk earlier. Jin Suk laughs and says Dongwu isn't really strong. However, back in middle school, Jin Suk was a part of Dongwu's clique. He was basically Dongwu's lackey. This kind of surprises Kang Jian, but Jin Suk elaborates that this was back when his father wasn't the party leader. And Dongwu comes from a legal family, with his dad being the chief prosecutor. All in all, what he was getting at is that in South Korea, one's strength depends on how influential their parents are. This whole conversation got to Kang Jian, as he realized that this mission wasn't easy at all. As he lay there in bed, fully distressed, his parents were peeking at him from the door. Kang Jian notices this and gets up. His parents then ask him if anything is wrong, and if so, he can tell them about it. Kang Jian initially denies having any issues, but as his parents kept staring at him, he eventually gave in and discussed his issues. He tells them about how the South Korean hierarchy system is disturbing and that he can't deal with it. It is totally different from what he has been taught, so he feels like the mission is a bit too overbearing on him. Steve replies by telling Kang Jian to not spout such weak nonsense. This wakes Kang Jian up, as he immediately stands up like a military person to hear what his senior comrade has to say. Steve asks him if he has forgotten who he really is. Kang Jian apologizes and vows to never be weak like that ever again. Afterwards, he gets on his laptop to search all the terms he has never heard before coming to South Korea. Terms such as lackey, MBTI, TMI, and so on. As he does this, he strengthens his mind, because an agent from North Korea's elite South Korean unit isn't supposed to be weak. He knows that failure is not an option in this mission. Seeing him like this makes his comrade parents feel at ease, and they leave the room. The next day at school, Kang Jian was sitting on his seat normally when Jang Dongwu looked back at him. Dongwu subsequently asks him if nothing happened to him the day before, as he did expect Kang Jian to get beaten up. Meanwhile, Kang Jian was having a hard time believing someone like Dongwu was actually a bully in the past. So, he directly tells him about how he was told by Jin Suk that Dongwu was a bully in middle school. Dongwu clears up the matter, saying that was a long time ago, and that he isn't that kind of person anymore. Kang Jian tells him not to be nervous about this, because Kang Jian isn't the kind of person who likes having lackeys. So, for Kang Jian, Dongwu will be a real friend. Kang Jian says this very awkwardly, but he thinks it came out naturally. Dongwu does say yes to him, but does so in an awkward manner. By now, Jin Suk had entered the classroom, and he was walking past Dongwu, when Dongwu mentions that he is glad that nothing has happened to Kang Jian yesterday. Kang Jian tells him it is fine, and that they'll be true friends from now on. Just then, Jin Suk, who is now seated on his seat, calls out to Kang Jian. In reply, Kang Jian greets him warmly, thanks him for the meal and asks if he got back home safely. This was stunning for everyone, including Li Era and even Dongwu. Kang Jian goes on and tells Jin Suk that he'll be the one treating him next time. When Jin Suk asks him to sit beside him, Kang Jian was a bit taken aback by this, because that site belonged to Huang Wuyang. Jin Suk asks him if there's an issue with that, to which Kang Jian just goes ahead and sits on the seat. To him, this signifies a change in the bully hierarchy at the school. He was now officially the number 2. It was all according to Kikaku, as a wise man once said. As he sat there, class after class went by and time was going by too. But as Kang Jian looked around, he still saw that there was one seat empty. He wondered what had happened, because he didn't beat Huang Wuyang to the point that he wouldn't be able to come to school. The scene then shifts to the TJ Sports Building, where Wuyang was in a push-up position, getting whacked across the back with a wooden stick by a man. This man was shaming him for not being able to do something so easy as getting into the elite class of kids. The man was Huang Jie-cheol, his father and the CEO of the Daejeong Company. He asks Wuyang if he has any idea on how much money he poured into him. The secretary tries to calm the man down, telling him he shouldn't hit Wuyang anymore, as he probably already got the point. Still, Jie-cheol reiterates the fact that Go Jin Suk's family is going to be the presidential family soon. So Wuyang should stick to his side at all costs. He must suck up to him until his lips fall off and then some. After that, he tells Wuyang to get lost as he doesn't want to see his face anymore. Wuyang, with anger on his face, promptly gets up and leaves the place. Meanwhile, Jie-cheol asked his secretary if he had prepared the report on Kang Jian's family. He informs Jie-cheol how the family owns a multinational company which has a virtual currency in 11 coins and several security programs. Not only that, but their capital is quite solid too. Hearing this, Jie-cheol tells his secretary to invite the family to a dinner. Confused, he asked where he should invite them to. Jie-cheol replies by telling him to invite them to the place they were at, the gym. After all, he was in no mood to let a bunch of nobodies mess with his business. Back at the school, it was time for everyone to go home. Li Era once again bids Kang Jian farewell before leaving. But this time, Jin Suk's bodyguard talked to Kang Jian. He tells Kang Jian to take good care of his family. Afterwards, Jin Suk also says bye to Kang Jian before leaving. However, Kang Jian found the bodyguard's words to be strange. After everyone had left, Steve Kang eventually came to pick up Kang Jian, but he felt relieved regardless. At their house, they were having dinner and having a conversation among themselves when suddenly, a knock was heard on the door. They opened the door to see that it was the secretary, who was sent there by the Daejeong group. The parents took it normally and asked why he was there. But Kang Jian knew that it was people from Huang Wuyang's family. Just then, the secretary reveals that the CEO's son had been assaulted by their son. This shocks his parents, who look back at him, and Kang Jian was left nervous and speechless. A grim atmosphere surrounds them, but the secretary assures them that their boss won't make a big fuss about this. Instead, he would like to have dinner with the father to talk things out. This lightens up the mood, as Steve laughs and suggests that a small scuffle between kids is no big deal. The secretary then tells Steve to come with him now, as the boss wants to meet him. Steve obliges and gets ready to go out. Feeling something fishy, Kang Jian thinks of going along with his father, but Steve looks back at him and sternly tells him to stay home, leaving both Kang Jian and his mother shocked. The secretary then takes to the TJ building, and there he meets Huang Jie-cheol at the training gym. Hwang Jae-cheol wastes no time in bringing up how his son was beaten up badly by Steve's son. He asks Steve what he intends to do to make up for it. Steve, smiling, asks Jae-cheol what he wants them to do to make up for the matter. Jae-cheol is clear in telling him that he wants Steve to make his son go to another school as a way to pay up for hurting Jae-cheol's son. Steve replies by saying that he can't do that because his wife insisted on getting their son admitted to the best school in the country. They got him in there after a lot of hard work, so now they can't undo that. This angers Jae-cheol, who walks right up to Steve, dwarfing him in sheer size and presence. Jae-cheol warns Steve, saying he should do it while Jae-cheol is still nice. Steve doesn't get intimidated though. Instead, he tells Jae-cheol to not do anything that both he and Steve might regret later. Pissed off, Jae-cheol hits Steve across the face with a back fist. But Steve looks back at him with a defiant look, which only angered Jae-cheol more. Following this, they take it inside the cage, where Jae-cheol badly beats up Steve. He puts the finishing touch by hitting Steve with a strong uppercut to the midsection, which left Steve gasping for breath. After this, Jae-cheol is done for the day, but he still grabs Steve by the hair. He once again tells him to get Kang Jian transferred to a different school, or else he will make it so that their family won't be able to stay in the country. He smashes Steve's head down on the mat, tells his secretary to pay Steve up for medical bills, and leaves the place. After this, when Steve was returning home in a badly beat-up state, the secretary offers him paychecks to cover the medical expenses. But Steve looked embarrassed and uninterested. The guy tells him that he better take it and not think about reporting to the police. After all, the Daejeon Company is an influential company, which is sponsored by the police. Steve assures them that he won't be doing that and begins walking away. The secretary asks him if he doesn't want to take the money for his medical coverage, to which Steve angrily snaps it away from his hands and leaves. Seeing Steve like that made the secretary laugh and call him an idiot. Later, when Steve gets home, both his wife and Kang Jian are shocked to see him in such a battered state. Worried, Kang Jian asks him if he is all right. Steve just brushes it off as nothing. However, the mother guessed what had happened, and she was pissed. Afterwards, Steve is seen inside his room, using his computer to hack the Daejeon Company servers and get rid of their security system. Steve vowed to make them pay for who they messed with. The next day, at the TJ Sports Building, it was like any other day for Hwang Jae-cheol. He played music and enjoyed his tea, ready for another great business day. Just then, the secretary barges into his room, citing a huge problem. Jae-cheol is annoyed by this, as he asks the secretary if he forgot how to knock, and why he was looking flustered so early into the day. The secretary tells him how all of their online service servers are down all of a sudden. Surprised, he asks what the IT department is up to which the secretary reveals that even the IT division's computers are down. This makes Jae-cheol panic, and his panic is doubled when he receives a call from another executive. The executive tells him how they are in huge trouble because the bank called them to inform them that all of their accounts have been frozen. Later that night, Jae-cheol was sitting in his room, still worried about what was going on. Just then, he feels someone's presence around him. Jae-cheol assumes it is one of his men, so he asks them if they've fixed the issue with the bank. However, when he looks at them, he sees a woman, the woman being Kang Jian's mother. Confused, Jae-cheol questions who she is and asks how she got in through all the security. Kang Jian's mother tells him that she has already taken out all the security guards, and all the CCTV cameras are also already disabled. Annoyed, Jae-cheol tries to intimidate her by saying how he is already having a tough time, and that he doesn't have time to deal with her shenanigans. But she just grabs Jae-cheol by the neck and drives his head against the table, pinning him down. She mentions how usually, in this kind of situation, she would take the life of her victim. But she won't do that to him, and for that, Jae-cheol should be thankful to Steve. It is because she promised to Steve that she won't be taking lives, which is why she is sparing him. Instead, though, she injects a fluid into Jae-cheol's neck, which will keep him in a vegetative state for the next 3 years. This will allow for Kang Jian to graduate without any hitch. The next day, Kang Jian prepares to go to school. He informs his parents that he is leaving, but he notices that Steve, in particular, isn't feeling his best. Still, both Steve and his mother warmly see him off. However, Kang Jian felt a sense of regret over what Steve had to go through because of him, so he apologizes to both of his parents for his misdeeds. His mother tells him not to worry about that, as she and his father have already taken care of that problem by themselves. This was slightly confusing for Kang Jian, but still reassuring enough for him to go to school. At school, Kang Jian sat at his usual seat beside Jin Suk, while Lee Era was talking with her friends. At one point, Lee Era notices Kang Jian and warmly smiles at him to greet him. Kang Jian also responds back with a smile of his own. After this, Kang Jian was thinking about how parents are needed to intervene for the smallest of matters in South Korea. He finds the culture here to be quite tough to accommodate himself to. Just then, Jin Suk speaks up from beside him, informing Kang Jian of how Woo Young's father suddenly collapsed yesterday. Now the company was in shambles too. His father apparently had a sudden problem like a heart attack or a stroke, but he can't pinpoint what exactly caused him to become like that. Kang Jian is taken aback by this, before he is suddenly reminded of what his mother told him about taking care of the business. But he tries to convince himself otherwise. Just then, Lee Era walks up to Kang Jian and asks him if he is free for the weekend. She subsequently tells him that her birthday is coming up on the weekend, so she invites him to the party. Kang Jian takes the invitation. Lee Era feels pleased and tells him that she will tell him about the location later. This seemingly angers Jin Suk. Just then, Woo Young arrives at school, and as he is walking past Lee Era, she asks him if his father is all right. Woo Young ignores the question and just goes ahead and takes his seat. Kang Jian observes his facial expressions, which were admittedly a bit hard to read. After school, Kang Jian stood for his car to arrive, but it didn't come. He remembers how Steve wasn't feeling good, so he assumes that he won't be coming. Just then, 3 students from the school come and approach Kang Jian, asking him if he is going home alone. Kang Jian is a bit overwhelmed to see his homeroom classmates, but manages to say yes. The students then offer him to come with them and take a bus ride back home. The trio then introduce themselves, the first girl being Shin Yoon-ah, the guy being Seo Deo-jun, and the other girl being John Yeju. They all wanted to be friends with Kang Jian, so this is a great way for them to bond. Afterwards, they ask Kang Jian where his house was, to which he tells them that he lives at the Banpo Blue Tower. This makes their jaws drop to the floor, as the Banpo Blue Tower is the most expensive apartment in the area. Kang Jian plays it off as nothing, as it's his parents' place, not his. Still, they find that quite amusing. Yuna also informs him that their academy is around that place too, so they can take the same bus. She also mentions how there is a great new teppanyaki place in that area, and invites Kang Jian to come along with them. Kang Jian wasn't sure, but Deo-jun tells him that it's not something he can skip on. Yuna also assures him that it's a great place and that he can just lay back and enjoy. Afterwards, they take the bus together and go to the teppanyaki restaurant. There, the 4 of them are served with teppanyaki and other nice delicacies. John Yeju tries the teppanyaki, and she can't help but exclaim how it is the best she ever had. Kang Jian was also looking to try it, but felt a bit hesitant. Yuna asks him if it is his first time trying teppanyaki, to which Kang Jian says no and takes a bite of it. Immediately, he is stunned by just how spicy and hot the food is. He breathes fire for a while, making others laugh, and is only able to calm down after drinking a glass of milk. After this, he thanks them for giving him the milk. Afterwards, John Yeju talks about how she didn't think someone like Kang Jian would get along with them, but he was doing surprisingly well. Kang Jian is confused, so Deo-jun explains how he is the type of kid who has been hanging out with Jin Suk and Woo Young, making him different from them. Yuna adds that while they're also in the same special class as Jin Suk and Ko, they're still very different. Confused, Kang Jian says he doesn't understand what they're getting at and asks for a simpler explanation. Yuna explains how people like her feel inferior when they look at people like Jin Suk, Lee Era, and the people they hang out with. But Yeju exclaims that despite the societal gap, Yoon-ah is still the #1 student in their school. Yuna feels a bit embarrassed and says that it's not very impressive, because all the big names are slacking off because they'll be going to universities abroad, making her the best by default. Kang Jian realizes that these kids weren't in his files, so they are what one would call the ordinary South Korean student. Just then, a bunch of kids from a different school arrive at the place. They are immediately ticked off by how rich kids from an international school have invaded their hangout place. They think it's awful, especially considering how small the place already is. They ask the rich ones if they're out to steal the commoner's spot. The rich ones are naturally feeling guilty and nervous as compared to the rowdy middle-classers. The middle-class ones then ask them to respond, as that is what's common when a question is asked, but this just pisses off Kang Jian. To avoid conflict, Deo Jun gets up and tells the other school guys that they're leaving. Deo Jun tells them that they are leaving because they are done with their eating. However, the brown-haired kid tells him that they can't just be leaving because they're rich kids after all. He grabs Deo Jun's shoulder and tells him to buy them something to eat, which intimidates the guy. This is when Kang Jian comes from behind and takes the brown-haired guy's hands off from Deo Jun's shoulder. He asks them if they are beggars because they are basically begging to get food. The leader of these bullies, the black-haired guy, finds this quite interesting because he thought only good kids go to international schools. Usually, all he'd have to do is intimidate them to get their entire month's allowance. Kang Jian then corrects himself from earlier, calling them thieves now instead of beggars. The black-haired guy tells Kang Jian to stop messing around and just pay for their food if they want to get out unscathed. However, this just excites Kang Jian even more, as he suggests they take this outside to settle it. This is when Yoon-ah flashes a 50,000 won bill and tells the bullies that they can take it. She apologizes on Kang Jian's behalf, citing him being new as a reason behind his attitude issues. However, Kang Jian tells her to not worry. Instead, he informs the bullies that he comes from a very rich family. He lives on the royal floor of the Banpo Blue Tower. Kang Jian subsequently flashes quite a few 50,000 won bills at the guys and asks them if they're now interested in talking. All of them go outside to settle the matter. The rich kids stand behind Kang Jian, and they shiver in fear, as Kang Jian feels secure knowing there are no CCTV cameras there. Meanwhile, the bullies wonder what makes Kang Jian feel so confident, but ultimately, they don't think it matters. After all, they have a chance to take Kang Jian's entire month's allowance just by beating him. Kang Jian turns his attention to his opponents and he thinks about how he can take them out. He thinks about punching and breaking jaws and strangling the leader, but realizes that it'll be too much. There are people from his school with him, so he can't let them see that. Just then, the brown-haired kid comes forward to fight, and he asks Kang Jian if he has any idea who he is dealing with. He claims to be a member of the boxing club and throws a punch at Kang Jian. But Kang Jian easily dodges the punch and almost mockingly asks the guy if they really are athletes. This angered the guy, but to no avail, as Kang Jian easily knocks him out with an uppercut. This shocks everyone, and the leader is also left stunned by the fact that Kang Jian just knocked out one of his toughest men with a single blow. Seeing their guy getting knocked out angers the other bullies to rush at Kang Jian. However, their leader tells them to not move. The leader asks Kang Jian if he knows Wu Young. Kang Jian asks him if he is referring to Huang Wu Young, to which the guy says yes. The guy then reveals that he and Wu Young were on the same crew once upon a time. He assumes that Kang Jian and Wu Young haven't come into contact, or else Wu Young would have beaten some sense into it. The leader then gets to the point, proposing Kang Jian to pay 500,000 won every month in exchange for the safety of all students from his school. Kang Jian was taken aback by the leader's ruthlessness and wondered if he is the worst of them all. By now, the leader had assumed that Kang Jian wouldn't be paying, so he decided to beat him into agreement. He assumes his stance and starts moving in like Mike Tyson, using the peekaboo style. His skill shocks even Kang Jian, who is taken aback and has to put genuine effort to dodge his quick punches. However, the guy had seemingly gotten Kang Jian into a position from where he could attempt a smash uppercut. The guy goes for the finishing blow, but to everyone's shock, Kang Jian uses his foot to block him on the spot. This disrespectful block only angered the guy more, who now wanted to teach him a lesson more than anything. The guy tries to overpower Kong Jian's block, but Kong Jian had his arm strongly trapped by his foot, pushing down on it. Just as things were getting more heated, the police arrived, and they asked the kids what they were doing. This causes a commotion right away, and the bullies all start causing distraction for the police and make their exit. Naturally, the leader tries to do the same, but as he tries to make an escape, Kong Jian brings out his mobile phone and throws it at the leader like a ninja throwing a shuriken. The phone hits the guy on the neck, dropping him on the spot and preventing him from escaping. The police capture him, but they also get a hold of Kong Jian and his friends. They are taken to the police station, where Kong Jian and the bully are made to sit face to face with each other, causing some tension. Meanwhile, the police were talking to Kong Jian's friends to get their statements. Yuna insists that it was their fault for constantly forcing them. The police ask exactly what were the bullies forcing on them, to which Deo Jun says that they were trying to extort money. The police ask the bully leader if he really did that, because if he did, he should know that the repercussions for extortion are very big. The bully confidently states that he was just asking for them to lend them some money because they go to the same educational academy. But they didn't even lend him money and are now framing him. His confident and rude tone intimidates Kong Jian's friends. The police ask them why they fought the bullies if all they did was ask for a loan. He demands for a proper explanation, or else he will make them rewrite their statements. Yuna exclaims that they are the victims. However, the bully argues that Kong Jian was the one who assaulted his friend, so if anything, he and his friends are the victims. Kong Jian's friends try to argue with him about the matter, but their loud screeches annoy the police officer. He tells them to stop and threatens to make them rewrite the statement once again, which stops them for that moment. Kong Jian remains silent, as he realized that he had gotten himself into a complicated mess. Just then, the bully's teacher arrives after hearing about him being there. Seeing him, the bully immediately quivers up in fear. The teacher just gives him the side eye, before apologizing to the police officer on behalf of his student. The teacher asks the police officer if his student had caused a huge problem and committed a big crime. The police officer says that it isn't anything big, and they just responded to a civilian report. No big victims have come up from the incident, so it is fine. Despite that, the teacher apologizes and promises to teach him better from now on. The police officer also expresses that he is a fan of the teacher and asks him to take good care of his pupil. The teacher then makes his way towards his student and picks him up by pulling on his ear. He berates him for getting into a fight with a civilian when he is slated to have his debut professional fight not too long from now. The teacher then notices something in Kong Jian, causing him to glare at him, and Kong Jian glares right back, showing no signs of intimidation. Anyway, the teacher then pulls his student away from there, leaving the place. Afterwards, the police officer informs Kong Jian and his friends that they can leave once their guardians come to pick them up. Not too long after, Steve arrives in his red car, maintaining his happy-go-lucky demeanor to pick up his son. However, later that evening at their home, Steve assumes a more serious nature, as he refers to Kong Jian as a comrade, and asks him if he has any idea about what he has done. Kong Jian apologizes. His mother also tries to ease Steve up by telling him how Kong Jian had acted because his friends were being bullied. Even so, Steve isn't pleased with the way things went. He thinks Kong Jian should have handled the situation without it having gone to the police. He reminds him of how he told Kong Jian that South Korea is a country that runs on information. Every little occurrence is recorded here. Kong Jian understands his mistake and says sorry once again. His mother tries to console Kong Jian by holding his hand and telling him not to be so upset over this. After all, they did manage to handle things relatively well, all things considered. Kong Jian still thinks that South Korea is a very complicated place to live in. Steve, not impressed by his demeanor, asks Kong Jian if he will continue to be so incompetent. Kong Jian assures his seniors that he won't be repeating these acts again, and will make sure he doesn't leave any room for complaints. Kong Jian then uses his computer to search on the internet about police stations, violence records, school violence, and on how to deal with money extortion scenarios. He uses these things to gather information about these things. The next day, Kong Jian goes to school on a bus. He had told his parents earlier that he will be traveling on public buses from now on, so there is no need to pick him up. After he arrives there, he sees Woo Young talking to the brown-haired kid he had knocked out the day before. The kid notices Kang Jian and leaves right away. Kang Jian subsequently approaches Woo Young and asks him if he is acquainted with those guys. Woo Young tells him it is none of his business and walks on ahead. Right then, Kang Jian is called by his friends for yesterday. As they catch up, Jin Suk's car arrives, and upon seeing Kang Jian with them, he looks rather displeased. Later in the classroom, Go Jin Suk asks Kang Jian why he has been hanging out with ordinary losers lately. Surprised, Kang Jian asks what's wrong with being friends with them when they are all classmates. Jin Suk does not think like that and says that he thinks all friends should be equals. Being friends with lower-class people only makes one's own level lower. However, seeing Shin Yuna and Ko having fun together, Kang Jian does not really understand what Jin Suk was getting at. Jin Suk tells him not to take the boring route and be more sophisticated. This makes for an awkward few moments between the two, as they fail to communicate properly. Just then, Kang Jian receives a message from Lee Era, giving him the address to the place where they were hosting the birthday event. She sends him a link giving him the directions. Kang Jian looks at her, which makes Lee Era smile, and Kang Jian replies back with a smile of his own. However, seeing Kang Jian getting close to Lee Era makes Go Jin Suk jealous, and it made him grit his teeth. At lunch break, Kang Jian, being a former soldier, eats up the food as if there were no tomorrow. He needed more food than the average student, and it was quite evident based on the manner of his consumption. Just as he was eating, Shin Yuna and her friends called out to him and were about to approach him to eat together. However, they are told to move aside by Go Jin Suk in a rude manner. Jin Suk joins up to eat together with Kang Jian, and he tells Kang Jian that he has been giving those low-class students way too much leeway. He mentions how lower-class hyenas like them are the worst and should be kept aside. This somewhat offended Kang Jian, but the topic changed quickly when a passing Lee Era asks Kang Jian if he checked the private message she sent him, and tells him to arrive at her birthday party on time. This interaction once again made Jin Suk feel like a piece of trash, and he was not able to handle it. He thumbs his hands down on the table before getting up and leaving without eating. Before going, he tells Kang Jian to clean up his food before walking off. This angered Kang Jian just as much. He also reacted angrily. He doesn't like how a capitalist twat like Jin Suk was wasting food like that. With his appetite calling for more food, though, Kang Jian thinks that he should probably eat up Jin Suk's share after all. Later, after the class ended, cars lined up at the gate as usual. Kang Jian, though, did not care, because he was going to take the bus along with Shin Yuna and Ko to get home. However, Go Jin Suk notices this and ends up bumping his shoulder into Kang Jian from behind. He subsequently tells Kang Jian that he will be giving him a lift home, so he should get inside his car. Kang Jian politely declines, saying he would rather take the bus. This pisses off Jin Suk greatly, so he looks back and once again reiterates to Kang Jian to get inside his car. He makes it sound threatening and like an order, so it intimidates the ordinary students. They wave bye to Kang Jian, who sighs and ends up agreeing to go home with Go Jin Suk. Inside the car, Go Jin Suk asks Kang Jian why he was hanging out with those ordinary students again when Jin Suk strictly told him not to. This annoyed Kang Jian, and he wondered why Jin Suk had to be so prickly about this matter. Just then, Jin Suk also tells Kang Jian not to go to Lee Era's birthday party. This shocks and confuses Kang Jian, but Jin Suk continues on, saying it is annoying to have him go there. His reason for why he didn't want Kang Jian to go there was simple. His family and Lee Era's family were on talking terms with each other. So, what he was implying was that Lee Era was going to be his future wife, so he didn't like the fact that his girl was showing interest in a guy like Kang Jian. This was hurting his pride. Kang Jian is deeply pissed off by this, and he asks Jin Suk if the reason behind his behavior was just plain jealousy. Jin Suk finds this labeling to be quite funny, but Kang Jian was very serious. He tells Jin Suk to stop the car. Annoyed, Jin Suk asks if he is looking to leave the car now that Jin Suk told him not to go to the party. However, Kang Jian gives him an intense stare, which scares Jin Suk, so he agrees to pull the car over. Kang Jian promptly gets out, and before leaving, he tells Jin Suk that friends don't behave the way he behaves with him, before shutting the car door on his face. This hurt Jin Suk's ego, so he immediately told his bodyguard to go and beat up Kang Jian. His bodyguard was a bit shocked, but Jin Suk was clear in what he wanted, and that was seeing Kang Jian being beaten to a pulp. The bodyguard hears him out, but cleanly denies accepting his order, as he is not obliged to follow his orders. Shocked, Jin Suk questions why he, a servant, would not follow the master's orders. The bodyguard reveals that he was hired by Jin Suk's father and not by him, so he is not inclined to follow his orders. Hearing this, Jin Suk wastes no time and dials up his father to tell him how his bodyguard is not listening to him. He then hands over the phone to the bodyguard, who is then ordered by the father to do as Jin Suk says. Left with no choice, the bodyguard goes after Kang Jian and calls out to him from behind. Kang Jian turns around, and the bodyguard tells him to go and apologize to Jin Suk right away. He did not want to put his hands on a kid like Kang Jian, so this was the best way out of this for them both. Kang Jian understands that the bodyguard was also in a pinch, so he assumes the bodyguard also understands how Kang Jian has no reason to apologize to Jin Suk. The bodyguard clarifies to Kang Jian that this was not about what is right and reasonable. It is about who holds more power, and in this case it is Jin Suk. Kang Jian says that this gives him even more reason for him to not apologize. This set things clear. The bodyguard needed to fight Kang Jian. However, Kang Jian glances around to see that there are CCTV cameras there. So, he asks the bodyguard if he really wants to fight in front of so many cameras. He instead offers the guy to come with him to a place he knows, where there are no cameras and they can duke it out properly. However, this was enough for the bodyguard to back down and go back to the car. Shocked, Jin Suk asks him why he didn't beat up Kang Jian. The bodyguard explains the situation with the cameras in the area, indicating how it is not safe for them to fight there. Jin Suk says in that case, the bodyguard should have just taken Kang Jian to a secluded area and beaten him up there. However, the bodyguard says that he cannot be doing that as he needs to stay within a certain proximity of the guy he is supposed to be protecting, so Jin Suk in this case. Which is why he tells Jin Suk to set up a proper date for a fight with Kang Jian, where he can take care of him for good, instead of a sudden encounter like this. Jin Suk looks at Kang Jian from the window before Kang Jian turns around and leaves. This frustrated Jin Suk, as he exclaimed how he hated Kang Jian, the bodyguard, and everyone in general for what was happening. Later, as Kang Jian was about to enter the building, the bully leader whom he fought with earlier sneaks up to see that Kang Jian really lives at the Bampo Blue Tower. This was good news for him, though, because he still had unfinished business with Kang Jian. He subsequently shows Kang Jian how they have kept Seo Deo Jun of Shin Yun A's circle captive. This prompts Kang Jian to follow him where they wanted him to come. It was at a shipyard. A few bullies waited there while keeping Seo Deo Jun hostage when the leader finally came back with Kang Jian. Deo Jun is a bit relieved to see Kang Jian, crying out his name in fear. The bully leader mentions how he did not expect Kang Jian to follow him here, because he didn't think Kang Jian would risk it for a lowly person like Deo Jun. So, he orders his men to release Deo Jun, now that he has Kang Jian right where he wants him. However, the bully leader makes sure to warn Deo Jun not to report this to the police, as that will only cause him more harm. Not only to him, but it will also cause harm to Shin Yun-ah and John Yeju. Hearing this, a sorry Deo Jun apologizes to Kang Jian, but Kang Jian grabs his shoulder and tells him not to go anywhere. He assures him that the two of them will be leaving together, so he should wait a bit. Moments later, Kang Jian launches himself like a missile at the opponents, going after the main bully first, who is left shocked by the sudden burst of speed. He puts a block up to protect his face, but Kang Jian readjusts and strikes his open midsection, knocking the wind out of him and sending him flying back. This stunned the other lackeys, but they were barely given any time to react. Kang Jian hits the first guy with a wicked punch to the stomach, before hitting the next guy with an elbow to the same region, dropping both of them in mere seconds. The third guy, shocked, charges at Kang Jian in anger. However, Kang Jian dealt with him with a simple back fist, knocking him out for good. Deo Jun is left at a loss for words, as Kang Jian stands alone amongst the plethora of bodies laid out around him. The bully leader finally comes back to his senses, and he's scared to an inch of his life, as Kang Jian stares at him and asks if they will come back to the place and keep bothering normal people if he spares them for now. Kang On then picks up a stick and breaks it, making it sharp enough to pierce through someone's skin. He then throws the stick away and only keeps a sharp bit in his hand. Seeing this, the bully mentions how he won't let Kang Jian get away with this lightly, but Kang Jian just grabs him by the collar and slams him down to the ground. Kang Jian starts bending his arm backwards, hurting him, and mentions how the guy is a boxer. So he takes the sharp part of the stick out, tells Deo Jun to go outside and wait for a bit. As Deo Jun leaves, he hears a horrifying scream coming out of the bully's mouth. Kang Jian tells the bully how he only shoved it inside his pinky nail for now, but if he keeps messing with his friends, he will make sure to shove more into his other nails and toenails. The bully cries in agony as Kang Jian gets up, tells them never to show up in front of him again, and leaves. The bullies are relieved to see Kang Jian leaving. Meanwhile, Kang Jian himself wonders if he has gone too far with a bunch of kids. This reminds Kang Jian of the rigorous training he had to go through from a very young age. He would be hanged from a tree with his hands tied, and his face being badly beaten up. Kang Jian wouldn't be the only one, as there were many other kids going through the same, with one of the kids having red hair just like Jin Suk. These were all traumatic memories for him, so Kang Jian did not want to think about it. Kang Jian shakes it off and goes over to meet up with Deo Jun. He tells him not to tell anyone about what happened today, and to keep it a secret between them. Kang Jian was trying to lighten up the mood, but Deo Jun was feeling scared. Kang Jian then offers him to go to the same restaurant as before with him so that they can have the delicious tekbibyaki again. The next day at school, Kang Jian had a normal day at school. Kang Jian waves Shin Yun Ah, John Yeju, and Seo Deo Jun bye. Everyone was feeling alright, although Deo Jun was still feeling a bit bad. Kang Jian was still content with how things were going on their end, but the stuff he was actually worried about was with Huang Wuyang. This is because, during lunch, Seo Deo Jun admitted that it was Huang Wuyang who called him to the side, where he followed. That is where the bullies caught him and took him hostage. Kang Jian understands that Huang Wuyang was talking to the bullies for that reason, so he understood that this was a matter he needed to take care of. Just then, Go Jin Suk arrives at the scene and tells Huang Wuyang to keep the gym open for the night, before looking at Kang Jian and smirking, indicating that he was setting up a fight with Kang Jian. This made Kang Jian happy, as this just made the process of taking care of things easier for him. However, Go Jin Suk's request doesn't sit well with Huang Wuyang, and he ends up saying no to Jin Suk wanting to use their gym. Jin Suk is shocked by this, but Wuyang explains how his father is in the hospital at the moment, so he doesn't want to involve himself in any more problems. This somewhat pissed off Jin Suk, and Kang Jian rubbed salt on his wounds by taunting him about things not going his way. Angered, Jin Suk told Kang Jian that he will be making Kang Jian pay back. However, Kang Jian simply walks past him, ignoring him entirely. This made him even more irate, but Kang Jian instead focused on Wuyang. He asks him what he did with Seo Deo Jun, before firmly grabbing his shoulder and telling him not to mess with them again. This makes Wuyang feel scared and nervous. After that, Kang Jian tells Wuyang to open up the gym tonight after all, because he has some things to do, some things that'll help sort the hierarchy within the school. Hearing this, Jin Suk grimaces in irritation. Later that day, Jin Suk's bodyguard stood outside the TJ Sports building. He sighed and wondered if he really had to fight some kid today. That being said, he does recall the fight between Kang Jian and Huang Wuyang and understands the fact that Kang Jian isn't simply just another kid. That being said, he doesn't see himself losing to a high schooler like Kang Jian. Just then, a person from South Korea's intelligence force, a former colleague of the bodyguard, arrives. The bodyguard is a bit shocked, but the guy mentions how it has been a while since they've seen each other because the bodyguard quit the job. The bodyguard apologizes, but the intelligence officer says that he has no reason to be sorry, because the salary on offer was very bad. Furthermore, he asks the bodyguard how his mother is doing. The bodyguard, surprised, asks if he knew about his mother's condition. The officer mentions how the bodyguard was one of the finest young recruits in the force, so it was a bit weird to have him leave so suddenly. The bodyguard apologizes again and says that he didn't contact the officer because he was abroad for a mission. The officer understands that, as their job has them going from place to place without prior notice. Afterwards, the bodyguard asks the guy what he was doing in the country now. The guy reveals that he is here for national security. The bodyguard once again apologizes and adds that he forgot about such things after quitting that job years ago. But the guy tells him it is no big deal, and that he actually wants to ask the bodyguard about something. He asks him about what happened to CEO Huang, and if he knows about it. The bodyguard says that he heard that the CEO has been in a comatose state because of a cerebral hemorrhage. But the guy reveals that some new orders regarding this have been issued by the top branch. They are doubting this is the work of the shadow. The bodyguard is at a loss of words hearing this, because he thought there was no way it could be the shadow he is talking about. However, the guy mentions that it doesn't stop there. They've also been doubting that the recent DDoS and hacking attacks on the company might be the work of the North. Namely, it is said to be the work of the famous hacker Zero of North Korea. This stuns the bodyguard. The guy continues on, saying how the Shadow, a legendary assassin who disappeared 10 years ago, suddenly appeared out of nowhere and chose to attack the CEO of an average company rather than the president of South Korea. Moreover, Zero, a hacker chased by countries all over the world, chose to attack a company that is barely a top 30 company in the country. He finds all of this to be strange, and thinks something fishy could be going on behind the scenes. Afterwards, the guy takes his leave, telling the bodyguard to take care. He also adds that he will just write up a basic report for this case before heading out abroad again on a mission abroad. As he leaves, the bodyguard thinks about how the guy should retire and be happy now. He can't quite get himself to believe that the Shadow and Zero, legendary figures from the North, are here in the South at the moment. Little did he know that one of them was having coffee and checking surveillance footage, while the other was cutting carrots in the kitchen. Later that day, the bodyguard and Kang Jian step into the cage for their scheduled fight. Kang Jian was approaching it as usual, while Jin Suk was confident about bodyguard. However, the bodyguard was feeling pathetic about having to fight a kid for another kid. He no longer wanted to do this job despite him being in need of money. After everything is set, Huang Wuyang takes his leave. Jin Suk tells him to wait and asks him why he was leaving so soon. Wuyang clarified that he wanted none of this. He already lent them the gym and gave Jin Suk a ride here, so that is more than enough in his opinion. Jin Suk laughs and asks if Wuyang is still mad about being dropped earlier. He tells him not to worry about that, as he promises to reinstate Huang Wuyang as his right-hand man after his bodyguard is done beating up Kang Jian. But Wuyang states he is not interested and leaves subsequently. This annoyed Jin Suk. After that, Kang Jian steps forward and asks if Jin Suk will become his lackey if Kang Jian defeats the bodyguard. Jin Suk finds this disrespectful. Kang Jian elaborates how Jin Suk is caught up in a cycle of bringing one guy after another, saying the new one is stronger than the one before. This has become never-ending and all these fights have become useless, so he is ready to put an end to it all. Jin Suk finds this funny, as he declares that there's no way for Kang Jian to beat his bodyguard. He heard from his father how his bodyguard is a former member of the National Intelligence Force. Kang Jian asks if that is true. If so, it makes the fight even more interesting for him. The bodyguard once again suggests Kang Jian apologizes to Jin Suk and end it right there. He will pretend nothing ever happened if he does so. Kang Jian replies by asking if he has no pride whatsoever. Despite being a former National Intelligence Force officer, here he is, ready to beat up a kid for money. The bodyguard admits that Kang Jian is right from his point of view, and he isn't very excited about beating up a kid either, so it's better if he just apologizes and ends it here. However, Kang Jian says that he doesn't feel like apologizing. In that case, the bodyguard was ready to teach him a lesson, but before he could even get his mind ready for the fight, Kang Jian had already attacked him with a roundhouse kick. This shocks the bodyguard, who only barely manages to dodge the kick. But Kang Jian uses the momentum from the first kick to spin around and try to hit the bodyguard with a spinning hook kick. However, to Kang Jian's surprise, the bodyguard actually blocks the attack. Meanwhile, the bodyguard also understands that Kang Jian is much faster and stronger than what he had expected, all while Jin Suk looks on, worried. The bodyguard then praises Kang Jian for his skill, but warns him that his half-baked martial arts will only get him in trouble. Kang Jian also understands that the bodyguard wasn't an ordinary dude, and that he was the real deal. It made him wonder if he should just take a few hits and lose the fight to protect his identity. However, he can't be doing that because of Jin Suk, who was yelling at his bodyguard to finish Kang Jian off fast. So, Kang Jian takes a stance and decides to see just how good a South Korean black belt really is. The bodyguard prepares himself as Kang Jian charges at him again. This time Kang Jian goes for a punch, which the bodyguard evades. But what shocks him about it is that the punch wasn't actually a punch, but rather an attempt to gouge his eyes. Kang Jian tried to capitalize on the bodyguard's distraction by trying to punch with his other hand, but the bodyguard catches it. He subsequently grabs a hold of Kang Jian's shirt and tries to use it as leverage to slam Kang Jian down judo style. However, Kang Jian is no ordinary guy. He masterfully uses his leg to stop the bodyguard's motion and puts pressure on his arm to disbalance him. This opens up some space, which Kang Jian uses by hitting a strong punch to the guy's ribcage, sending him skidding back. Shocked and hurt, the bodyguard realized that Kang Jian wasn't using normal martial arts. Meanwhile, Kang Jian also understood that he can't knock the bodyguard out while holding back. On the other hand, a frustrated Jin Suk yelled at his bodyguard for not being able to finish off Kang Jian. He tells him to go all out and take Kang Jian's life if necessary. This motivated the bodyguard to charge at Kang Jian this time. He goes for a takedown, but Kang Jian pushes off the bodyguard's shoulder to get out of the way. This also puts him in prime position to try and kick the bodyguard's head off, but the bodyguard catches his leg and picks him up to slam him down on the ground like a powerbomb. However, Kang Jian maneuvers himself mid-air to use the momentum against the bodyguard and sends him tumbling across to the middle. However, Kang Jian is surprised to see that the bodyguard managed to tank that. Despite that, Kang Jian taunted the bodyguard by asking him if he now realizes that he isn't skillful enough to fight Kang Jian while holding back. The bodyguard is surprised to learn that Kang Jian noticed this. He mentions that he was underestimating Kang Jian because he was a student, but says that he is the real deal. Kang Jian asks him if he is going to go all out now, to which the bodyguard says that he admits his defeat and tells Kang Jian that he doesn't need to apologize to Jin Suk. This shocked Kang Jian, but it shocked Jin Suk even more. He asks the bodyguard what he meant by this, to which the bodyguard tells him to calm down and informs him that he will be handing in his resignation tomorrow. He also tells Kang Jian that he would like to fight Kang Jian for real one day, but that would have to be outside. Kang Jian doesn't dismiss the idea, but turns his attention to Jin Suk, saying he has some talking to do with him. He takes his gloves off and starts approaching Jin Suk, wondering what he should do with him. Jin Suk, frightened, tries to threaten his way out of the situation, saying he shouldn't dare lay a hand on him. He has an influential father after all. Kang Jian knows his father well. He is a candidate for the general election and is slated to be the new president of the country in the coming months. Jin Suk tells him that's right and that he shouldn't mess with him. Despite that, Kang Jian throws a hand at Jin Suk's face but stops before touching him. Still scared Jin Suk though. Kang Jian contemplates whether or not he should take out Jin Suk as he is a spoiled brat who gets by using his father's name. That being said, he does recall that one time Jin Suk fed him high-quality meat, so he chooses not to hit him. Jin Suk takes this as Kang Jian getting scared, and he tells him that Kang Jian made the right choice by not attacking him. Annoyed, Kang Jian once again throws his hand to his face, this time touching him but not doing any damage. As expected, Jin Suk is scared, so Kang Jian makes fun of him by asking if he has always been a coward. However, Jin Suk calls him a coward because he can't dare cause any harm to him. Hearing this, Kang Jian tightens his grip around Jin Suk's face and uses his finger to shut off his breathing. Soon, Jin Suk understood that he couldn't breathe like this. He tries to resist and force Kang Jian off of him, but he just couldn't. Soon, he starts tearing up and losing sense when Kang Jian finally decides to let him go. He says that much should be enough to teach Jin Suk a lesson. However, a crying Jin Suk still says that he will tell his dad about Kang Jian, and that with just one word, his dad would wipe out Kang Jian. This prompts Kang Jian to once again grab him by the face and stop him from breathing. A few moments later, Jin Suk was still suffering, but it didn't stop him from threatening Kang Jian. So, Kang Jian continues to torture him. This sequence continues for a while, before Kang Jian asks Jin Suk if he still plans on causing trouble, to which he says he won't. Kang Jian finally lets go of him, which makes him fall down. Kang Jian then starts getting dressed up while telling Jin Suk how he can make Jin Suk feel hell without even leaving a mark. He can make every day at school feel like hell. However, he doesn't expect Jin Suk to just lay down and take this. He expects him to retaliate by telling his influential father about this, and try to cause any harm to Kang Jian. But he asks Jin Suk if he honestly thinks Kang Jian is the type of guy to be scared off by those things. Kang Jian gets close to his face and stares straight down his soul to intimidate him further. Kang Jian then adds that he came to this country to make friends, complete his education, get a nice job, and then get to a higher social standing eventually. Meanwhile, Jin Suk kept thinking about how he won't let this slide and name Kang Jian suffer. But Kang Jian makes it clear that this is the path that he must take no matter what. So, if Jin Suk tries to disrupt him, he would have no choice but to make him pay. Kang Jian once again goes to grab his face, but to Jin Suk, Kang Jian starts feeling huge, and just looking at them scares the heck out of him. Just then, Huang Wu-young steps in and tells Kang Jian that what he has done is enough. He wanted Kang Jian to leave it at that, and he quickly approached Jin Suk to help him back up. Kang Jian finds this funny, as he questions them how it feels to be on the receiving end of what they usually dish out. Wu-young reassures Kang Jian that he will make sure this never happens again, before swiftly carrying Jin Suk out of there. Kang Jian watched and wondered if what he did was really enough, because it felt a little lacking to himself. The next day at Seoul International School, Kang Jian arrives at class as usual, but he is taken aback to see that only Huang Wu-young was there, and that Go Jin Suk's seat was empty. It makes him wonder what happened and if he should have finished off the deal yesterday. Just then, Lee Era calls out to Kang Jian and reminds him that tomorrow is her birthday, and asks him if he will be coming. Kang Jian says that he will, which makes her happy and excited. Meanwhile, Go Jin Suk was at his father's office, complaining about how his son was hit. His father, Go Yun Cham, watched on with anger in his eyes. Go Jin Suk keeps on pestering his father about looking into the matter, which ends up annoying Go Yun Cham. He asks his son if it is really necessary for him to skip school on top of everything else going on. Jin Suk exclaims that he got beaten up badly by someone to the point that he doesn't feel safe going to school because of him. He mentions how he was suffocating because of him and almost lost his life. However, Yun Cham thinks Jin Suk is just exaggerating the matter, as he didn't even have a scratch mark on him. Jin Suk is deflated by this. Yun Cham then questions him on how long he wants to keep bothering his father over his small school fights with friends. He reminds him that this is no longer primary school, and that he should mature up. Jin Suk goes on about how he was seriously beaten up and feels threatened, to which his father suggests that he quits going to school here and moves abroad to study with his sister. This annoys Jin Suk. After that, Yun Cham calls Agent Han, the bodyguard who was protecting Jin Suk, into the room. Jin Suk is annoyed at seeing him, and he tells his father how Agent Han left him high and dry, allowing him to get beaten. Yun Cham shuts Jin Suk up by telling him to respect Agent Han. After all, his father had to work really hard to get someone like Agent Han to work for them. Yun Cham then apologizes to Agent Han and tells him that he raised his son like a prince, which spoiled him rotten and made him bratty. Agent Han doesn't want to talk much, and reminds Yun Cham that he will only guard his son if the pay is increased significantly. Yun Cham clarifies that he didn't call Agent Han for that. Instead, he wanted to ask what was this whole deal about his son getting beaten. He has been annoying Yun Cham for a long time by stating how he got beaten up by a kid. Yun Cham asks if there's any truth behind this, and if so, how did someone beat Jin Suk up in Agent Han's presence? Agent Han answers honestly, by saying that everything Jin Suk has said is absolute. This shocks Yun Cham, as Jin Suk points out how he was telling the truth. Agent Han then says that he strongly advises Jin Suk to not mess with that student in any way. Curious, Yun Cham asks him why he is suggesting that, to which Agent Han says that even he isn't sure if he can beat Kang Jian without a weapon. Yun Cham takes this in, before slowly resuming his conversation with Jin Suk, informing him of how many politicians got their careers ruined because their kids did something stupid. He asks Jin Suk if he wants to mess up his father's political career too. Furthermore, Yun Cham doesn't understand why Jin Suk would pick a fight with someone that strong. If anything, he should have tried and befriended the person for his own advantage. That's how politics works, and if Jin Suk can't do it, he can't follow his father's footsteps. So, he tells Jin Suk to get lost and not come running to him about such things again. The next day, Kang Jian makes his way to the Hilton Hotel, where Lee Era's birthday party was being hosted. He goes to the floor where the party was to be hosted while recalling how this was the hotel where Jin Suk treated him to meet. Just then, Lee Era's bodyguard notices Kang Jian and approaches him. He tells him how he is a bit early and that they're setting things up, but he is willing to let Kang Jian get inside. Kang Jian happily accepts, but does feel suspicious about the guy knowing him. It makes him wonder if he is being looked into. As he goes inside the party venue, he is shocked to see just how lavish the place looked. It was looking so much different from last time, with the golden setting and musical stage in there too. Just then, a dressed-up Lee Era notices Kang Jian and greets him warmly. She asks him if she is looking pretty, to which an honest Kang Jian nods. Afterwards, Lee Era informs her how the other guests haven't come in yet and tells him to take a seat, while she goes back inside to get dressed properly for the event. Kang Jian does take his seat, and soon a plethora of high-profile individuals arrive at the party. Not long after people start coming in, Go Jin Suk also arrives at the party. He is warmly greeted by the other guests, but Jin Suk isn't very pleased to see Kang Jian there as well. Jin Suk purposefully goes ahead and takes a seat at the same table as Kang Jian, even though there was a better one available. Kang Jian understands that this was just Jin Suk's way of showing off how much influence he holds because people are following him around. But honestly, Kang Jian couldn't care less. Just then, Lee Era takes to the stage and starts speaking. She states how this speech was going to be delivered by her father originally, but he refused to do so. Anyway, she thinks it's better that he didn't because if he does show up, the adults will flock around him. She then tells everyone present how she will give them a show they will never forget. She calls this party a once-in-a-lifetime event that will blow everyone's mind. This makes the guests speculate if they've invited some huge singer. However, Kang Jian still didn't like the lively atmosphere there. Suddenly his eyes go to Han Yuju, the girl who is the biggest target of them all. She also arrives at the party, and Lee Era quickly goes over to her to greet her. The other guests also follow suit, all circling around her to have a talk. This surprises Kang Jian, because she didn't expect Lee Era to be close with Han Yuju too. Just then, Jin Suk interrupts by telling Kang Jian how it is only a matter of time before the main seat becomes his. So, he tells Kang Jian that it is still not too late, and that he can be forgiven if he begs for it. However, Kang Jian simply flashes his hand at his face, which is enough to trigger his trauma and make him fall over on the ground. Just then, the lights go out, and this deeply concerns Kang Jian. It makes him wonder what was even happening because blackouts in South Korea are not normal. As everyone turns on their flashlight to look around them, Kang Jian, though, with years of training, has much better eyes than the average person, and with them, he could see that there were 9 unknown people in the room suddenly. Shocked, he wonders if this was a terrorist attack, or perhaps this was a kidnapping attempt. He gets on the move as soon as he sees one of the guys approaching Lee Era and Han Yuju. He dashes right in and attacks the person, because he didn't want them to meddle with his mission. But as he pushes them down on their chest against the ground, the lights come on. It was actually a guy holding a bouquet of flowers for Lee Era. He mentions how he was there to celebrate her birthday. Seeing this, both Han Yuju and Lee Era are shocked. This is when Kang Jian understands that this guy was a member of a K-pop band, and that the 9 guys were professionals who came to perform. As things go back to normal with the group about to begin their performance, Kang Jian is beyond embarrassed. It also helped that Lee Era was pissed off at him for ruining her surprise gift. After the party, Kang Jian walks back home. On his way, he curses himself for making such a big mess up. He couldn't believe that he thought a hostage situation was going to happen at such a big place in South Korea. He then recalls the aftermath of what he did. Lee Era chewed him out by yelling at him for doing what he did. It was hard for her to get them to perform at her birthday, but he basically ruined it. Han Yuju, though, told Lee Era to cut him some slack because she thought it was cool. Lee Era didn't exactly get what the cool part was about it, because the leader of the K-pop band left in tears. This is when Han Yuju explains how Kang Jian did all of this to protect her. This makes Lee Era blush. Han Yuju further elaborates how if this was a real hostage situation, where the person could have held something dangerous rather than a bouquet, it could have been bad. However, Kang Jian threw himself without a sense of care, just so she could protect Lee Era. Han Yuju can't help but find that awesome. Meanwhile, Lee Era blushes while teasing Kang Jian. Back in real time, Kang Jian sighs, recalling the tumultuous moments. However, he is satisfied with the fact that he could get a nice introduction to the top priority, Han Yuju, who is the daughter of the current president of South Korea. The next day at the Seoul International School, Kang Jian entered thinking like it was any other day. However, the moment he enters, he gets flocked around by a bunch of girls. They were all excited to see him and tell him about how he was incredibly cool yesterday. Kang Jian takes this as a confirmation that he dealt with the situation well enough at the end. The girls then ask him if today is his first day dating Lee Era, or if it was day 2. Lee Era giggles and blushes before denying it, saying it is nothing like that. Kang Jian also smiles as she walks past her and sits on his seat. However, Jin Suk, sitting beside him, tells Kang Jian that he can't be acting cool now, because he is the one who ruined Lee Era's party. Kang Jian looks at him, to which Jin Suk asks him if he will bully Jin Suk again. Before he could finish, Kang Jian teases him by throwing a hand near his face. Once again, Jin Suk falls from his seat out of sheer fear. This alerts the girls, including Lee Era, and this embarrasses Jin Suk. However, Kang Jian surprisingly offers him a hand back up. Kang Jian then asks Jin Suk if he really likes Lee Era that much. If so, he wants him to man up and say it directly. Furthermore, the midterm exams were coming up, so he wanted to increase his studying. He brings out a bunch of books and starts studying them as he aims for the top score at the school. When exams finally come around, Kang Jian prepares himself to do everything he can to get that top score. Despite that, his actions came off as rather cringe-worthy and weird. However, when the exam comes to an end, the top scorer board is displayed publicly. There, Kang Jian sits firmly at number 1, while Shin Yuna and Dong Woo occupy 2nd and 3rd spot respectively. Seeing this, Kang Jian is happy because he knows that his mission was going all according to his plan. Afterwards, a flashback is shown from back when Kang Jian was a kid, going through ruthless training. He was hung by his hand using a rope, and other kids surrounded him too. Kang Jian looked like he was on the edge, so the red-haired kid told Kang Jian, number 7, that he shouldn't be pushing himself, or else he will lose his life. He mentions how Kang Jian might get discarded because of them. Kang Jian doesn't care though, he sees this as a part of training, and if he can't keep up with it, he would rather get discarded. Still worried, the red-haired kid told him how useless people will be discarded, but a hurt Kang Jian thought it wouldn't be worse than what was happening to him. Just then, Kang Jian wakes up from this nightmare, scared and sweating a lot. As he wakes up, his comrade and mother for the mission asks him if he is okay. Kang Jian is still sweating and traumatized by the dream he saw, so his mother pulls him in for a hug while telling him it is all right. She hugs him and tells him to forget about all the bad dreams. She comforts him and tells him that he will only have good dreams from now on, and that she will make sure of it as his mother. This seemingly triggers something inside, which causes him to get away from his mother, leaving her surprised. He then walks away while referring to her as his comrade and by telling her not to worry. He promises to accomplish what he has set out to accomplish and vows to return to his own country draped in glory. His mother tells him there is no rush in doing that, and that he should take his time and rest easy for once. However, Kang Jian doesn't respond and just clutches his chest, because it was feeling like he had a knife inside there. The next day, Kang Jian goes to the Incheon airport, where he meets up with Shin Yun-ah and Jang Dong-woo. They were all headed to Jeju for the Asian International Math Olympiad that was being held there. He is one of the representatives of the school, so this was an opportunity for him to further establish his image. But more importantly, Han Yuju was also going there as a senior representative. This was a good opportunity for Kang Jian, because he was already on good terms with her after what happened at Li Era's birthday. So, when Han Yuju notices him there, she walks up to him and asks him how he has been doing. She also asks if Kang Jian will protect her if something happens to her in a joking way, which makes Kang Jian laugh awkwardly. Yuju then tells everyone to loosen up and do their best because they are going to Jeju to represent their country. They all reply enthusiastically, but Kang Jian takes this time to analyze just how many bodyguards Yuju had. He came to the conclusion that she had 10, which is expected of the top most prioritized person on his list. Following this, the crew arrives at Jeju Island for the competition. Once there, the teacher tells everyone to rest as the event itself will begin tomorrow and last for 2 whole days. She also encourages the students to try their best and perform well here, because making an impact here would do them favors when trying to enter a high-class university. Kang Jian hears this and it fires him up to win it all, because one of his goals is to get into a top university. Shin Yun-ah asks him why he looks so fired up, to which Kang Jian says that he is looking forward to winning it all. Shin Yun-ah tells him that it isn't as easy as he thinks it is, because he needs to compete with other students, and also those from 2nd and 3rd years as well. Kang Jian doesn't mind that though, because he has always been quite good at math from a young age. He once again recalls an event from his childhood, where he and the other kids were made to take an intermediate-level math exam at a relatively young age. Kang Jian ended up passing the exam, which spared him from punishment that day, but the kid who didn't got kicked hard by a North Korean soldier. Back to the present time, Kang Jian wonders why he is remembering his traumatic childhood events more often nowadays. Just then, the team bus for the Chinese students arrives, and they all look like they're serious and mean business. Not too long after, the Japanese also arrive, and they look much more relaxed and flamboyant compared to the rest. However, what surprises Kang Jian was that one of the Japanese students looked eerily similar to the red-haired kid he always sees in his dreams. As all of this is happening, Han Yuju's main bodyguard watches on. Just then, the intelligence agent who talked to Jin Suk's bodyguard earlier on arrives, and he has some information to pass on to the guard. He tells him about how the top branch of North Korea is currently looking to target Han Yuju, raising the tension. The intelligence agent mentions how he has heard a lot about Han Yuju's bodyguard, Kim Hyuk. It is said that Kim Hyuk is too good to be stuck just doing security service. So he asks Kim Hyuk if he would like to switch over to the intelligence agency, as they are at a severe lack of capable on-field officers. Kim Hyuk appreciates the flattery and informs the intelligence agent that if his country needs him, he is willing to help. The intelligence agent tells Kim Hyuk that he likes him and offers to meet up with him to discuss things once the current problem is dealt with. Kim Hyuk agrees before directly heading to work. He uses his Bluetooth receiver to tell bodyguards 4, 8 and 6 to check the rooftop and emergency room again. He tells 3, 5, 7 and 9 to do a thorough check on all the personnel entering through the main entrance. Number 10 is told to join up with Kim Hyuk himself to check the elevators and the 22nd floor. Meanwhile, Number 2 is told to check Han Yuju's room again. The intelligence agent watches all this and can't help but be impressed by Sergeant Kim Hyuk's brilliance. He really rates him highly. Despite that, and the fact that the entire security squad was full of high-quality personnel, the intelligence agent can't help but feel uncomfortable about this whole situation. The scene then shifts to Jang Dongwoo and Kang Jian entering their room. Worried, Dongwoo asks if it is okay for him and Kang Jian to share the room, or else he can try and get a different room. Kang Jian is confused by this, but Dongwoo is wondering if he would be comfortable with this. Kang Jian says there's nothing to be uncomfortable about with friends, but also clarifies that he will be taking the bed near the window. Dongwoo smiles and agrees to the terms. Later, Kang Jian stares outside from the hotel room, checking out the people having fun on the beach. He thinks about how South Korea is different from what he heard. He was taught that all the capitalists gather in Seoul, and that the rest of the country is stricken by poverty. That doesn't seem to be the case in reality though. This is when he tries to slap some sense back into himself. He couldn't believe he was having such thoughts and was actually about to doubt his own country. Just then, Jang Dong-woo asks Kang Jian if this was his first time in Jeju. Kang Jian hesitantly admits it. Dongwu then offers to take him out to sightsee and have the food on their final day here. Kang Jian asks Dongwu if he knows Jeju well. Dongwu tells him that he might not know it because he lived abroad, but Jeju is like the primary holiday location for people living in Seoul. After all, it is just an hour away on a flight from Seoul. Kang Jian takes in all of this information. Afterwards, Dongwu asks if Jin Suk and Kang Jian had a falling out recently. Kang Jian asks him why, to which Dongwu says that he hasn't seen them talk much lately. Kang Jian thinks about how Dongwu seems like a genuinely good guy, but from what he heard, even Dongwu used to be a delinquent. South Korea was really complex after all. Kang Jian then mentions how he heard that both Dongwu and Jin Suk's parents are a big deal in the country, and asks if parental status is really that necessary to hang out. He asks if Dongwu has ever hung out with Daeojun, Yeju, and Shin Yuna before. Dongwu is confused, so Kang Jian continues on about how he had tekbiyaki once with them, and suggests Dongwu joins in for the next time. Dongwu agrees. Kang Jian continues on how Shin Yuna in particular is awesome, because she is really good at math. He also brings up how Dongwu told him that he sucked at maths, yet here he was entering the competition. Dongwu insists that he just got lucky, which prompts Kang Jian to jump on top of him on the bed and playfully putting him in a chokehold. Dongwu gives up, but Kang Jian tells him that they should take this opportunity to get closer to Yuna. So, he wants to go together with her for sightseeing on the last day. Dongwu agrees to it before passing out. Kang Jian is shocked by this, because he forgot just how strong he was. He then tries his best to wake Dongwu up. Later that evening, Kang Jian, Dongwu, and Yuna meet up to study together. Dongwu says how he had no idea when he fell asleep. Yuna says he must have been tired, to which a guilty Kang Jian plays along. Yuna then adds how the second and third year students have not arrived yet. Dongwu says that those students are competing against each other, so they don't want to study together as a group. Yuna clicks her tongue as she expresses how she is just feeling like an extra at this competition. She then asks Kang Jian why he called her to this meeting. Kang Jian reveals that he called them here so that they don't feel like extras. He then presents piles of paper in front of them and tells the two to take a look. They wonder what it is before finding out that these were practice questions. Kang Jian reveals that these are the official question papers of the last 5 math Olympiads. Shocked, Yuna tells him how these question papers aren't easily accessible. Dongwu adds to that, saying he has only ever seen people with access to these a few times. This makes Yuna ask Kang Jian if he compiled them together from all kinds of foreign servers. Kang Jian smirks as he thinks about what actually happened. He had told his father for the mission, Steve Kong, about how he needs to win. So, Steve decided to hack through the server and find this year's question papers. However, Kang Jian says he can't use those. Steve asks him why. Because this was a part of his mission. But Kang Jian says he can do it himself. This actually made Steve happy, so he decided to provide him a little help to prepare. So, Steve used his computer skills to go ahead and compile these for Kang Jian. Back in the present time, Kang Jian was proud of Steve for doing that, as the three of them start discussing stuff. Just then, a Japanese student arrives and starts talking to Kang Jian in Japanese. After taking a look at her, Kang Jian is shocked to see that it was number 13, the red-haired kid from his past dreams. Seeing her smile, he had no doubt that it was indeed Agent 13. She asks Kang Jian if he could help her a little. Kang Jian still couldn't believe what Agent 13 was doing there. Meanwhile, Yuna and Dongwu were confused, because they didn't speak Japanese. Just then, Kang Jian replies to her in Japanese, asking her what's her problem. The girl reveals that she is looking for a place that sells mobile chargers, because she forgot hers. Kang Jian tells her that those can be found in convenience stores. Yuna and Dongwu are amazed by how talented Kang Jian was, speaking a totally different language with ease. The girl then asks Kang Jian if he could come with her to the store to help her, because she is afraid that she won't be able to close down the language barrier. Kang Jian agrees. His friends asked him what she was saying. Kang Jian tells them that she asked him to go to the store with her. Before leaving, Kang Jian tells them to solve the problem. Dongwu agrees, while Yuna wonders what would happen here if Kang Jian didn't speak the language. Meanwhile, Kang Jian and the girl walk together, with Kang Jian feeling uneasy. Once outside, the girl finally drops her facade and asks Kang Jian how he is doing, because it has been 5 years since they've last seen each other. However, Kang Jian looked at her with skepticism. He didn't expect to see her like this, because it is not really common for children trained in the facility to know who is going where after some time. It's not like they can question or talk about it either. The kids just concentrate on whether or not they survive themselves. However, here he was, standing in front of Agent 13, who was dancing and singing like an ordinary girl in front of him. A while later, she asks him what his name is, to which he reveals that he is called Kang Jian now. She tells him that she thinks it's a beautiful name. After that, Kang Jian asks her how she is doing, to which she replies in Japanese by telling him that her name is Tomo AI. She also mentions how she is happy to see him again, before pointing out how it has gotten late, so she thinks they should head back now. Before she leaves, Tomo AI tells Kang Jian to be careful. This stuns Kang Jian, as it makes him question whether or not Agent 13 is on a mission here. Following this, Kang Jian comes back to join up with Yun Ah and Dong Wu. They ask him what took him so long, to which Kang Jian says that he just took his time taking in the fresh air. Dong Wu tells him how it is not fair that he goes and enjoys himself while they're studying, before telling him to help them solve the problems. Kang Jian helps them do just that, but as he is teaching them, Yuna notices something. She asks Kang Jian if he is okay. Confused, Kang Jian asks her what she means, to which Yuna says that Kang Jian is looking a bit off. Kang Jian then lies about having a bad stomach and needing to go to the toilet. However, Yuna tells him to just head back to his room and rest, as he already probably knows how to solve these problems. Dong Wu agrees and tells him to go rest while he and Yuna study for a while longer. Kang Jian obliges and heads back. However, Kang Jian was actually worried about the sudden appearance of Agent 13. He wondered why she was here, and if some special order was passed by the Northern Top Branch. He wonders if it is an assassination order, but he doubts that they would give her that order when Kang Jian is literally also in South Korea. As he reaches the corridor, he notices Han Yuju's room being guarded properly by Sergeant Kim Hyuk and another guard. This makes him wonder if the new plan has something to do with Han Yuju. He then wastes no time and rushes into his room and calls up Steve Kong. Steve picks the call up normally and asks his son if he is enjoying Jeju. However, Kang Jian changes up the tone by referring to him as Comrade Jumgang and asks him if any new order has been passed on by the Northern Branch. Steve asks him what he is referring to, which tells Kang Jian that Steve probably doesn't know. Steve asks Kang Jian to tell him about it in detail, but he decides against doing that and putting them under more pressure. Kang Jian's mother, the Shadow, also overheard this and asked Steve what order Kang Jian was talking about. Steve tells her that he doesn't know, but he assumes that someone must have appeared in front of him, someone from the North Korean intelligence agency. This worries the mother, and she immediately runs off. Steve tells her not to rush things without knowing anything, but he also uses his hacking skills to hack into the hotel's camera to find Kang Jian. Meanwhile, Kang Jian thinks that he needs to confirm about this from Agent 13 himself. So, he goes to the reception to ask the receptionist about his Japanese friend, Tomo AI, and asks him to tell him where her room is. The receptionist denies his request, saying he can't give that sort of information. Kang Jian asks him if he can at least call her up and ask her to come here, to which the guy says yes. He tells him to tell her that Kang Jian is waiting for her. However, she doesn't even pick up. This is when Steve calls him again and asks him to not search aimlessly and tell him who he is looking for, because he can help. Kang Jian asks him to tell him about Tomo AI. Steve quickly searches up the database to find out that she is living in room 1110. He tells Kang Jian to go there and wait at the door, which Steve will then unlock for him using his hacking. Kang Jian follows what he says, and once he reaches the room, Steve does in fact do as he promised. This made Kang Jian realize just how valuable Man Jumgang, the man currently portraying Steve Kong, is. With him on his side, any mission is possible. Afterwards, Kang Jian searches the room that was empty to see if he could find any leads. He notices that Agent 13 lives alone in this room, and that the room layout is the same as his. So, as he searches vehemently, Kong Jian suddenly gets an emergency message from Steve Kong. He is told that someone was approaching the door of Tomo AI's room. It worries Kong Jian and makes him wonder if this was Tomo AI, but he brushes that off because the steps sounded too heavy. He hides himself inside a room, only to find out that it was the hotel staff who had come to deliver a package. The staff subsequently leaves, but it makes Kong Jian wonder why a staff would enter the room, and if this was actually an ally of hers. This, along with her suspicious message early on, confirmed that something fishy was going on. Kong Jian then comes out and opens up the special packaging, and what he finds leaves him flabbergasted. It was C4 explosives. The explosives were strong enough to take out hundreds of people, so he couldn't believe why this was brought, and what the North were even thinking. Meanwhile, Tomo AI was done hanging out with her Japanese friends and greeted them off before slowly starting to enter her room. Kong Jian notices this, and with not much time on his hand to do something, he picks up the C4 explosives by hand. Just as Tomo AI opens up the door, Kong Jian escapes the room via the window. He stands on a narrow platform outside the window to hide himself, but Tomo AI still guesses something fishy was up because of how one of the windows was partially open. Kong Jian uses his mouth to hold the C4 remote before jumping down a couple of floors to not get caught. So, when Tomo AI looks outside from the window, she doesn't find him. Kong Jian remains stealthy for a while before sliding down to the ground from a couple of floors. However, just as he gets down, the South Korean intelligence officer spots him and asks him what he was doing there. Kong Jian gets nervous, which makes the officer press him more and declare his actions to be suspicious. Kong Jian understood that the guy didn't see him jumping down from above, which gave him confidence to confront him back, asking him who he was and calling him suspicious instead. Kong Jian explained that he was one of the students from the Seoul International School, who was there to participate in the math Olympiad. The guy points out that it was quite strange for a student to be roaming around in such a place late at night. Kong Jian brushes it off as just him coming down to grab some snacks. Just then, Agent Kim Hyuk, Han Yuju's bodyguard, approached the intelligence officer to report something to him. This prompts the officer to go along with him, but he tells Kong Jian to get back inside quickly before leaving. After they leave, Kong Jian breathes a sigh of relief as he manages to hide the C4 from the guy. That being said, he couldn't help but wonder what Agent 13 was up to all of a sudden. Meanwhile, the section chief of the intelligence agency asks Kim Hyuk if he was certain about what he was saying. Kim Hyuk mentions that he is sure that some unknown entity hacked into the hotel system, and they also wiped out their traces. The section chief asks him what the tracking team was doing, to which Kim Hyuk apologizes and adds that their team wasn't competent enough to deal with the cyber attack. The section chief immediately instructed him to evacuate Han Yuju elsewhere, because this place wasn't safe at all. Kim Hyuk immediately gets to work, contacts his team, and prepares to execute their plan. Meanwhile, the section chief calls the head of the intelligence agency and informs him of the hacking incident amongst all the other incidents that have occurred. He mentions that the place wasn't safe at all, which is why he instructed Han Yuju to be evacuated elsewhere. Not only her, but there was also the son of Xierong, the seventh most influential man in China's ruling party, who was participating in the event. From Japan, Foreign Minister Tanaka's daughter was also there. Considering everything, he adds that he is really calling off the Math Olympiad event, because endangering these important people would put the relationships of the three nations in danger. Afterwards, the section chief calls up a man named John, and tells him that Shadow and Zero are probably in South Korea as suspected. Meanwhile, Kong Jian returns to his room. As Jang Dong-woo sleeps, Kong Jian wonders if he should contact Steve Kong about the situation at hand. However, he reckons that he would be better off talking to Agent 13 about this mission first before making a move. He wonders if the party really ordered her to carry out such a large-scale attack. This wasn't a simple assassination order. It was a massacre in the making, where many kids were going to lose their lives. Just then, Kong Jian tries to shake the nervous feeling off. There was no reason for him to feel so worked up about this thing. If the party was really ordering this to happen, he should be a loyal soldier and accept what the party ordered, because that's what's best for his nation. Just then, Jang Dong-woo is hit by a dart. Kong Jian looks out the window to see that it was done by Agent 13, Tomo AI. She reassures him that Dongwoo was still alive, and that she only incapacitated him to make sure he doesn't hear out their conversation. Tomo AI then makes it clear that she was there to get back the C4 from Kang Jian. Overwhelmed by emotions, Kang Jian asks her if the party really ordered for this to happen. He couldn't believe that the party would order the massacre of innocent kids. He wasn't ready to accept this and wanted to confirm with the party himself before making a call. But this just pissed off Tomo AI more, who declares that anyone who tries to interfere with her mission will be executed on the spot. In a sudden burst, Tomo AI launches herself at Kang Jian, ready to attack him while he is off his guard. She tries to decapitate him with a kick, but Kang Jian goes full Matrix and avoids the kick before stepping aside. She asks him if he was trying to betray the nation, to which Kang Jian told her to calm down. Pissed off, she charges at him again. Kang Jian manages to avoid most of the blows, but it still pushes his back against the wall. Kang Jian explains that he just wanted to contact Man Jungang, who is his partner on the mission, but she once again charges at him to shut him down. As she tries to kick him, Kang Jian uses the TV on the wall as leverage to pull himself up and avoid the strike. This also left Tomo AI open and allowed Kang Jian to press down onto her, dropping and restraining her on the ground. Kang Jian adds that if he asks Steve Kong, he can actually contact the party leaders and ask them what was up. He believed there was something wrong with the order given to Agent 13. Tomo AI, though, mentions that she has properly confirmed it and is sure that the mission is legit. This really shocks Kang Jian up, but it also allows Tomo AI to shove one of the darts into his thigh and allows her to get away. Just then, Shin Yuna starts knocking on the door and asks Kang Jian and Dongwoo to come out quickly. However, Tomo AI had already caught hold of the unconscious Dongwoo by now and threatened to inject him with another dart, which would definitely end his life. She wanted Kang Jian to stop resisting and hand over the remote if he didn't want that to happen. As Yuna keeps knocking and tells them to come out for an emergency, Kang Jian puts the remote down on the ground. However, in a shocking move, he smashes the remote, breaking it for good. This pissed off Tomo AI, who gets ready to take Dongwoo out as revenge. But Kang Jian tells her that if she takes Dongwoo's life here, he would make sure that she wouldn't get out alive either. Left with no choice, Tomo AI concedes and decides to leave for the moment. However, as she comes out of the room, it creates a huge misunderstanding. Shin Yuna was shocked to see a girl come out of Kang Jian's room like that. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed, but when Kang Jian approached her, she explained the mess they were in. Yuna informs him about the president's sister's announcement, which asks everyone to leave the hotel building immediately. Baffled, Kang Jian doubted that the South Koreans had already figured out their plan, so he goes inside to bring Dongwoo out, while Yuna wonders if Dongwoo was also with the girl, along with Kang Jian. Just then, Kang Jian collapses abruptly, probably because of the sedative dart. Kang Jian dreams about what Tomo AI said about executing anyone opposing the mission, before waking up unceremoniously from his sleep. He noticed that Jang Dongwoo was beside him, but they were in a different place. He spots his teacher, who attends to him after he wakes up. She asks him how he could sleep so calmly amidst so much chaos, but in response, Kang Jian just asks her where they were. She explains that they evacuated the hotel and have moved to this modest lodging as a safety precaution, though it really bummed her out because she preferred the hotel better. Kang Jian asks her where the other students were, to which she says that they've gone out to compete in the math Olympiad as was planned. She thinks it's quite strange that they had to leave the hotel for safety purposes, but they are still making the students compete. Worried, Kang Jian immediately runs off to catch up with the students. The teacher tries to stop him and tell him that he can't participate, but to no avail. Kang Jian rushes towards the hotel because he knows how dangerous the situation is. However, he halts his progression upon seeing military officers outside the hotel for protection. Kang Jian tries to go inside, but he is stopped by the said officers, who tell him that the place is restricted. Kang Jian tells them that he is a participant, but they point out that the competition had started long ago, and he can't enter now. Kang Jian elaborates that he couldn't grab his belongings during the sudden evacuation of the hotel, so he wants to go and get those things now. Once inside, Kang Jian wonders if everything is safe now, because the security here is tight. However, knowing that Agent 13 was the one they were up against, he knew that it was not going to be safe. She could very easily sneak in bombs underneath her skirt and later plant them strategically, before blasting them when it's time. However, he finds some relief knowing he had already destroyed the remote. That being said, he still can't drop his guard. After all, the bomb itself was delivered to Tomo AI by an accomplice. This could mean that she has more people who could possibly help her get another bomb. So, as he tries to go and track her down, he is recognized by Agent Kim Hyuk. He knows him as a student of the Seoul International School, but informs him that he can't participate in the competition because it had already begun. He suggests that Kang Jian go back to the new lodge because the hotel has safety concerns. Kang Jian says that he knows about that, but mentions that he has a friend, Shin Yuna, participating. He thinks she might get worried if she doesn't see him around, so he was there for her. Agent Hyuk tells him that the lunch break isn't far away, so he is willing to allow Kang Jian to stay around until then, so he can meet her. Kang Jian appreciates that, and also asks Agent Hyuk if he can go to his room and retrieve his phone that he left behind last night. Agent Hyuk allows him, and so he gets on the elevator. As he goes up, Kang Jian notes that his top priority is to track down Agent 13. He also thinks he should contact Steve Kong and tell him about what's going on. He knows for a fact that he needs to stop Agent 13 first, which will buy him time. Once he has time, he can contact the party and ask them about the mission. If the main objective of the mission is to take Han Yuju out, then he is willing to do it himself. He doesn't really want to do it, but if taking her out allows him to save multiple innocent lives, then so be it. However, when he enters his room to retrieve his phone, Kang Jian is shocked to see his mother for the mission in his room already. She asks him why he had left his phone in the room so carelessly, and adds that she was worried about him. She hugs him and tells him to calm down, as everything is going to be just alright, leaving Kang Jian overwhelmed. As she calms him down, Kang Jian suddenly remembers his objective and pushes her away. He asks her how she was telling her to be calm when the party had literally ordered a bombing mission to Agent 13. She tells him not to worry about that and focus on his own mission. His mission in this country was to be a normal person and make a lot of friends, so that's what he should focus on. Kang Jian knows that, but he doesn't understand why the party was ordering bombing because it was directly contradicting his mission. His mother tells him that the party has canceled the mission, so he can just go back to having fun with his friends and come back home when it's time. Kang Jian is taken aback by this and asks her about Agent 13. She replies by informing him that she was told about the mission's cancellation as well, so she has safely escaped. Learning this, Kang Jian calms down a little, while his comrade mother tells him to refer to her as his mother from now on. Meanwhile, at the makeshift headquarters of the Intelligence Bureau, trackers tell the section chief that the target has disappeared and that they can't find any traces of her escaping at the airport or the ship docks. This was surprising for the section chief, as he couldn't digest the fact that a young Japanese girl was, in fact, a terrorist. However, her sudden disappearance and the C4S found in the room indicate that she really was a terrorist. The section chief then asks them about the person who hacked into their system and informed them about the terror attack. The trackers tell him that they can't track him down either. They assume that it must be one of their spies living in North Korea who tipped them off about this. However, this assessment pisses off the section chief. There is no reason for a South Korean agent to hack their system to inform them about a terror attack. He reckons this whole scenario is a result of a rift between northern factions. He thinks the old regime might be the masterminds behind the terror attack, while the new faction, working under the young leader, could have been the people who tipped them off about this. However, the terror attack is no longer their biggest headache. What worries him the most is that a hacker on the level of the infamous Zero has shown up suddenly. Meanwhile, Tomo AI was unhappy with the fact that the mission was abolished. She asked the man in the room with her about who could have been the one who tipped off the Southern Intelligence. The man thinks it might be Agent 7, or in other words, Kang Jian. Tomo AI calculates that he must have taken her out first, before tipping off the South Koreans, and eventually, he also tipped off the North Koreans, which made them evacuate Agent 13 quickly. The guy also thought that all signs definitely pointed at him too. Afterwards, Agent 13 asks the man if he knows Man Jumgang, the man currently known as Steve Kong. Hearing the name bamboozles the man. He asks her how she knows about Man Jumgang, to which she says that Man Jumgang is Agent 7's partner according to him. Flabbergasted, the man asked if she was really implying that the great hero of the nation, Man Jumgang, who lost his life years ago, is still alive and kicking. The scene then shifts to Jang Dong-woo's luxurious villa, where Kang Jian is seen chilling, and Jang Dong-woo was down in the swimming pool. Eventually, Dong-woo snaps and asks Kang Jian how he can be so nonchalant about everything that has transpired. He reckons that someone must have definitely taken them out with sleeping pills, because there is no other explanation as to why the two of them would be the only ones sleeping till so late. Kang Jian feels sorry for what happened to Dong-woo but keeps quiet. Just then, Shin Yuna arrives and thanks Dong-woo for letting them stay in luxury at their villa. Still salty, Dong-woo asks her how she was doing in the competition. Yuna says that she was doing great because all of the problems were already taught to them by Kang Jian. This only rubs more salt in Dong-woo's wounds. Just then, Han Yuju also arrives in her car and asks the three of them if she can join in as well. They obviously welcome her with open hands, but deep down, Kang Jian wonders if he would be able to assassinate these three people if such a mission was given to him. After the math Olympiad ended, the students were all flown back to Seoul. The event ended up going without a hitch, but because of the unsettling moments early on, the committee wasted no time in flying them back to Seoul, instead of letting them hang out there. After coming back, at school, Seo Deo-jun and Jeon Yeju can't help but boast about their friend, Shin Yuna. They talk about how she is truly incredible for competing and outdoing many second and third-year students to get an impressive silver medal finish at the Olympiad. Yuna clarifies that she could only do well because of the tutoring that Kang Jian gave her, and if Kang Jian had participated himself, he would have won it all. Hearing this, Go Jin-suk gets jealous and tries to put down Kang Jian by stating that there is nothing impressive about that competition at all. Kang Jian could tell that Go Jin-suk was still salty about their previous altercations, and not just him. It felt like the entire school was the same as it was, all except for the fact that Huang Woo-young, for some reason, would give him menacing looks from time to time. The scene shifts to later, at Kang Jian's house. Kang Jian and his mother were having dinner. His mother tells him to eat a lot. However, Kang Jian had noticed that Man Jumgang was not present, so he asks her where his comrade was. This upsetted her, so Kang Jian corrects himself and asks her where his father was. Pleased, his mother informs him that Steve Kang has gone on a business trip and that it will take a few days. She tells him not to worry about it though, and instead focuses on eating well and getting along with his friends. Afterwards, Woo-young visits his father, who is still in a comatose state. Seeing his father like that upsets Woo-young and angers him too. Just then, his father's assistant arrives with 200 million won, as requested by Woo-young. The assistant asks him why he had asked for so much money to be brought, but this angers Woo-young. He asks the guy if he really expects Woo-young to sit still when his father is in the state that he is in right now. He had no idea about some of the circumstances leading up to his father's hospitalization, which is why he took Kang Jian lightly and behaved well with him. The assistant tries to make him understand that there is no proof of Kang Jian's family being involved behind his father's state, but Woo-young points out that it is already certain that it was them. After all, Woo-young's father beat up Kang Jian's father, who owns a security company. The next day, their company's servers got hacked into, and his father was put into a vegetative state. It only makes sense for it to be them. Still, the assistant adds that an active investigation was going on about the matter, but Woo-young was having none of it, and he was ready to make a difference with the money he had. Next up, Woo-young shows up at a boxing gym, where he finds the boxer guy from earlier training. They take their conversation outside, where the boxer asks Woo-young what prompted him to contact him for the first time since starting high school. Woo-young asks him if he knows Kang Jian, the guy who beat him up too. This runs a shiver down the boxer's spine, but when Woo-young accuses him of being scared, he brushes it away. So, Woo-young suggests they gather all the hotshots from their middle school group and teach Kang Jian a lesson. He suggests the boxer bring out guys like Sang-hoon and Ju-hyuk, but the boxer clarifies that those guys are now fully focused on their sporting careers. Just then, Woo-young drops the bag full of cash in front of him, telling him he would take care of the matter with the money and also make sure to take care of their education and jobs. He also asks the boxer to contact Jang Yong-sik, whom Woo-young had recently gotten out of juvenile prison. The mere mention of Jang Yong-sik freezes up the boxer, but Woo-young continues on, saying a guy like him is necessary. After all, he has nothing to lose and won't fear stabbing someone. Woo-young pays the boxer some money in advance and assures him that Woo-young will handle everything. His only job was to gather the necessary people. Later, the boxer invites some guys for a meetup during the weekend. Oh Sang-hoon, the 190-centimeter guy, came along with the behemoth that is Bang Ju-hyuk, who stood at 202 centimeters. They asked the boxer why he had suddenly called them during the weekend. The boxer is a bit taken aback by the fact that Bang Ju-hyuk got bigger and taller than Oh Sang-hoon. Displeased, Sang-hoon wanted to know why he was called there during his previous weekend break. The boxer asks why he was being so prickly and tells the two of them to sit down first. As they do so, Ju-hyuk mentions that he only recently got taller than Sang-hoon because he used to be shorter back in middle school. Sang-hoon also mentions that Ju-hyuk is doing great in his sports career. He has joined a popular wrestling team and was paid 3 million won as a signing bonus. Ju Hyuk adds that Sang-hoon is doing great as well. He has made a name for himself and is also being sent to Europe to compete in a prestigious competition. Sang-hoon thinks that going to Europe is no big deal, and that if it were up to him, he would much rather join a wrestling team like Ju Hyuk. His current training regime doesn't even allow him to eat properly, which he attributes to be the reason why he hadn't grown much. Ju Hyuk tells him that he has some money on him and that he will be treating them to some meat today. The boxer intervened and added that he would be the one treating them because he is the one who invited them. Surprised, the two of them ask the boxer if he had won some lottery for him to suddenly show kindness to them like this. The boxer explains that the threat is actually coming from Woo Young and that he wants a favor for them. This quickly pisses off the two of them, because they wanted nothing to do with a guy who ignored them after middle school. Woo Young wasn't their friend, so they weren't going to eat food bought with his money. After all, Woo Young always showed off to them because of his father's money, and he stopped contacting them after he was done using them. This is when the boxer reveals that Woo Young's father is in a comatose state. This shocks the two. The boxer continues, adding that Woo Young is the only son of the CEO of the Taejong Group. He promised to take care of their futures if they do him a favor. Not only that, he also mentions that Woo Young took a lot of slack for being friends with them from his father, and their connection with Woo Young was a big reason behind why they got into good high schools. Still, Sang-hoon thinks Woo Young should have at least contacted them. Instead, he went ahead and deactivated all of the contact information to avoid them. Ju Hyuk also doesn't want to work with him because he sees Woo Young as a traitor, someone who pissed all over the middle school circle they worked so hard to create. The boxer hears this, and it makes him recall his conversation with Woo Young from the other day. After Woo Young promised to take care of everything, the boxer actually told him that he can't expect them to sell out just because he is throwing money at them. To them, the betrayal they suffered at the hands of Woo Young created a wound that can't be filled with money. That was when Woo Young revealed that he broke contact with them because his father threatened to halt their sporting careers if Woo Young kept hanging out with them. This touched him back then, so in real time, he reveals this to Sang-hoon and Ju Hyuk. Obviously, they were shocked by this revelation, but the boxer clarified that Woo Young isn't the type of guy who lies. That being said, he was concerned because Woo Young also wanted them to team up with Jang Young-sik. This prompts an immediate no from Ju Hyuk, while Sang-hoon asks why they would need a psycho like Jang Young-sik for this favor. However, the boxer tells them about the guy named Kang Jian, who is their target. He admits to have lost to him comprehensively, which stuns both Sang-hoon and Ju Hyuk. The next day at school, the tension between Go Jin-suk and Kang Jian remains the same. Jin-suk only gets more riled up as Lee Era greets Kang Jian instead of him after coming to school. But behind them, there was Hwang Woo Young, who still glared at Kang Jian with a sinister look on his face. However, the one he approached was Jin-suk instead. He asked Jin-suk to come outside for a little talk, and so he followed. Once outside, Jin-suk asks him why he had called him out, to which Woo Young reveals that he is planning on giving Kang Jian a beating of a lifetime. Jin-suk also agrees with that, but Woo Young clarifies that he was being serious. He wants to cripple him for life. The intensity overwhelmed Jin-suk, but he regains composure and asks when he can watch it happen. Hwang Woo Young continued, adding that he was willing to do what Jin-suk wasn't able to do. Jin-suk was allowed to watch and enjoy, but in exchange, he just wanted Jin-suk to handle the backlash. Go Jin-suk hesitantly agrees to handle that, but tells Woo Young to make sure Kang Jian tremble in fear in front of him, something Woo Young was looking forward to. After school, all the students were heading home as usual. As Jang Dong-woo was about to leave, Kang Jian and others greeted him off. However, before leaving, Dong-woo asks Shin Yuna if it will be okay for him to also go to the same tuition academy as them. Yuna, nice as always, welcomes him. This makes Dong-woo happy, and he leaves in a good mood. After he leaves, Seo Deo-jun and John Yeju ask Yuna why Dong-woo was suddenly asking for her permission to join their academy. Besides, he was a rich kid and he attended top-tier tuitions, so why was he interested in theirs? Yuna explains that it came from them talking a lot during their stay at Jeju. Yuna told him stories about their academy and their teacher, so Dong-woo began to take an interest in it. Despite that, both Seo Deo-jun and John Yeju were opposed to him suddenly barging in and getting so close to Yuna. Kang Jian notices Deo-jun in particular and teases him by asking him if he was jealous. He teases him quite a lot for being obvious with his blushing face. Meanwhile, the boxer, Bang Ju Hyuk and Oh Sang-hoon watch this from afar. the two ask the boxer if he really got beaten up by a guy like Kang Jian, because from the looks of it, he looks like a goofy and weak kid. Embarrassed, the boxer explains that he lost because Kang Jian suddenly sucker punched him, but they still didn't see why he was so feared. However, the boxer recalls how Kang Jian had tortured him and he didn't really look like an ordinary guy back then. Just then, Huang Woo-young comes out and greets them. Sang-hoon and Ju Hyuk get a bit awkward, but Woo-young plays it cool. He asks them where Jang Young-sik was. The boxer tells him that Young-sik told them he was busy at work and suggested the four of them pay him a visit instead. Huang Woo-young doesn't mind that, and so the four of them set off to go and meet up with Young-sik. Once they arrive at Young-sik's workplace, they notice that it was a nightclub. This made them wonder if Young-sik was working as a bartender there. The boxer says he has no idea about that, because Young-sik and he only occasionally talk to each other. Just then, a man arrives in a luxurious car, and that man turns out to be Jang Young-sik. He welcomes them and mentions that he is the manager of the club. He then tells them to get inside so they can have a proper reunion. Meanwhile, at Kang Jian's house, he returns and asks his mother where Steve Kang was. She reminds him how she told him that he would be away for a few days, before asking him to wash his hands properly and eat something. Kang Jian replies with a smile and obliges. Noticing this, his mother asks Kang Jian if something good had happened, because he seemed jollier than usual. Kang Jian admits that he is happy because he has been getting closer with his friends. This makes his mother really happy. She says that she is glad as long as he is glad too. Back at the club, the five of them sat inside the club enjoying music. Young-sik asks if he should bring them a cocktail, to which Bang Ju-hyuk says they shouldn't drink, as they're still students. Oh Sang-hoon asks Jang Young-sik if he is a bartender here or something like that. Young-sik tells him that he is actually the manager of the club, making Sang-hoon kinda jealous. Young-sik then turns his attention to Woo-young and asks him about the favor he wanted. Woo-young states that he came here to ask for a favor, but from the looks of it, he thinks that wasn't a very wise decision after all. Young-sik tells him not to think like that and mentions that he is glad that they all came here. And about the favor, he is willing to do it because he is sure that Woo-young is going to give him a lot of money for it. And as for the guy he needs to take out, Young-sik is fine with it as long as he gets to take his life for good. The next day, Kang Jian wakes up at 5 a.m. and gets ready to go out for his morning job. As he is about to go out, his mother brings him a glass of water. Kang Jian tells her it's not necessary for her to wake up so early for him like this. She tells him that she does this out of her own will, and that drinking a glass of water before exercising is good for the body. Kang Jian drinks it before heading out for a jog. What starts off as a usual jog turns into a fast-paced sprint as Kang Jian tests his limits on the streets of Seoul. After exhausting himself with a long sprint, Kang Jian settles down. Just then, he notices the boxer along with Sang-hoon and Ju Hyuk. He overhears them talking about their plan to take out Kang Jian. Ju Hyuk asks if everyone is really okay with doing something like this. Sang-hoon sees no problem in this, because Huang Woo-young already told them that he will be taking care of the consequences. The boxer seconds that, and mentions that there's no need to worry, because Woo-young already said that there is someone even more influential than Woo-young, who is backing this. So there's nothing for them to get cold feet for. However, what worried him was whether or not they had arrived a bit too soon to catch him. Just then, Kang Jian walks up to them and asks them if they were looking for them. The guys get shocked by his sudden appearance and by his guts to confront them like that. Ju Hyuk tells him that they are here because Kang Jian had previously beaten up their friend. Kang Jian asks them to be clear if they were there for revenge. Angered, Sang-hoon begins to step forward, but Kang Jian tells him not to. He points out the many CCTV cameras in the area and suggests that if they want to fight, they can fight in that abandoned factory where he beat up the boxer. Saying this, Kang Jian walks off, leaving Sang-hoon overwhelmed by his cockiness. Ju Hyuk tells him not to worry, because the two of them have never lost a fight when they are together. Meanwhile, the boxer seethes in anger, as he vows to make Kang Jian regret all of this. Huang Woo-young watches this from afar from his car. His driver and secretary tries to tell him not to go ahead with this. He thinks they are better off dealing with this like a company than stooping to violence. Woo-young was having none of it, but the guy was still persistent. Just then, Young-sik holds a knife to his neck and tells him not to make so much noise. He threatens the guy by saying that his knife has seen a lot of blood. Woo-young tells him to stop, which ends up stopping Young-sik for then. Afterwards, Young-sik asks if he really gets to take out Kang Jian's father for good. Woo Young says that he can't help it if the father ends up losing his life. Young Sik likes the sound of that, and he can't help but look forward to it. He asks Woo Young if he will really be sent abroad to live a luxurious life if he finishes off Kang Jian's father. Woo Young reminds him that it was Woo Young who had gotten him out of juvenile prison, so he should have no reason not to trust him. Meanwhile, at the abandoned factory site, Kang Jian stood alone against the boxer, Ju Hyuk and Sang Hoon. The boxer suggests they attack Kang Jian all at once, but Sang Hoon thinks that isn't necessary, because he is in a higher weight class, hence stronger. Sang Hoon is the one who charges in at Kang Jian, but Kang Jian counters him almost nonchalantly with a straight punch. The punch catches him flush, but Sang Hoon still manages to tank it, and once again go for the grapple. Kang Jian notices this and strikes Sang Hoon again, this time with a body blow. The punch was so strong in fact, that it dropped Sang Hoon on the ground. Kang Jian then asked the other two to come to him, because he didn't have all day, and needed to attend school as well. Just then, Kang Jian notices that Sang Hoon was actually acting, and that he used the opportunity to grab his leg and hold him in place. This gives the boxer and Ju Hyuk the chance to strike him at once, as Kang Jian stood in place. The scene goes back to the car, where Woo Young tells Young Sik to inform the others to take a picture of a battered Kang Jian, and use it as bait to lure Kang Jian's father out. Young Sik thinks that is too much work, and that they should just sneak up on the father and take him out for good. Woo Young is annoyed by this, and asks Young Sik how he would avoid the police if he were to attack the father in front of other people. The wise thing would be to lure him out to a secluded area, and take him out there before catching a flight and flying abroad. Young Sik says that he doesn't really care about the method they use, as long as he is compensated properly. The secretary was still feeling iffy about this, and tried to warn Woo Young against doing it, but Woo Young wouldn't budge. Just then, Kang Jian's mother knocks on the car's window, as she had noticed something was off while observing Kang Jian from the building. She recognizes the driver as the secretary from Taejong Group who paid them a visit earlier. Meanwhile, she recognizes Woo Young by his school uniform and asks if he was a friend of Kang Jian's. Annoyed, Woo Young tells Young Sik to take care of her. Young Sik immediately gets out of the car and points his knife at Kang Jian's mother's throat, before taking her into the car as a hostage. After that, Woo Young tells the driver to get going, to which the driver agrees, but he doesn't know where they were supposed to go. Annoyed, Woo Young yells at him and tells him to take them where the others were. Meanwhile, Kang Jian's mother kept asking why they were doing this and where her son was. She also adds that her husband was also injured by these same Taejong guys, so she wasn't finding this right. Young Sik replies by telling her that they have business with her husband and asks her where he was. Young Sik subsequently asks Woo Young if he can also handle the matter if he takes Kang Jian's mother's life too. Still annoyed, Woo Young says he will handle it. Young Sik then tries to intimidate her, but she tells them that there's still a chance for them to stop before something bad happens. In the meantime, Woo Young voices his reason for being annoyed. Nothing was going according to his plan, which is even more reason for him to be pissed off at Kang Jian's mother for threatening them. However, she is serious now, and tells them to do themselves a favor and not make her take their lives. Back at the factory site, the boxer and Ju Hyuk rushed in to attack while Kang Jian was being held by Sang Hoon. However, Kang Jian smartly ducks down to avoid their blow, while simultaneously using his knee to smash Sang Hoon's face. This brutal course of action stuns the boxer and Ju Hyuk, allowing Kang Jian to shuffle away. Afterwards, Ju Hyuk tells the boxer that he will grab a hold of Kang Jian first, after which the boxer can unload on him. Ju Hyuk jumps right in to grapple with Kang Jian, but Kang Jian swiftly strikes his arms away in a quick and swift motion. He gives Ju Hyuk no chance to think, and almost immediately unloads a barrage of precise and quick strikes on him. Even though it looked like Ju Hyuk would be able to tank those strikes, he couldn't withstand them and got knocked out. This leaves the boxer stunned and nervous about himself. But Kang Jian makes easy work of him by dashing forward and taking him down with one swift punch. And just like that, Kang Jian had defeated all three with relative ease. Meanwhile, Young Sik finds it quite funny how Kang Jian's mother was speaking with such a large mouth when her life was in danger. He once again points the knife at her throat. Worried, the driver tries to warn them once again. He says, as someone older to them, he sees it as duty to stop them from doing something so extreme. Woo Young yells at him again and tells him to keep driving towards their destination. Young Sik, though, felt a bit weird about how the mother wasn't even bothered a little when a knife was literally on her throat. Eventually, they arrived at the site, and Young Sik had the duty of keeping the mother hostage. However, she just nonchalantly pushed him aside and got out on her own. Confused, Woo Young asks him why he was letting the lady roam free, to which Young Sik tells him that she was a weird one. As all of them get out and start looking around to see where the others were, Kang Jian comes out, the only man standing, and he didn't even have as much as a scratch on him. However, Kang Jian is a bit shocked to see his mother there. She quickly goes over and hugs him, relieved to see that he was okay. Kang Jian tried to calm her down, telling her they were just friends and all. Meanwhile, Woo Young understood by now that his friends were defeated, and he was not happy at all. Kang Jian states that what they had done now had crossed the line. Woo Young retorts back by seeing it was his father who had crossed the line. Woo Young's father was in a coma because of his father. This really shocked Kang Jian, but his mother asked him if he really thinks a man as fun-loving as Steve Kong would be able to do something like that. Kang Jian agrees. He then says that Woo Young made a big mistake by bringing his mother into this. Just then, Young Sik jumps in and attacks him with a knife suddenly. It was a move to scare Kang Jian, rather than to hurt him, and Kang Jian didn't even flinch a little. Young Sik understood that being fearless ran in the household. Kang Jian grabs Young Sik's hand and asks him if he used the knife to threaten his mother too. Young Sik admits that he did. Enraged, Kang Jian went to punch him right there, but Young Sik smartly drops the knife from one hand and picks it up with his free one and aims to slit Kang Jian's throat. He aims for the vital artery, but only manages to leave a small cut on the throat because Kang Jian stepped aside. This made it clear to Young Sik that Kang Jian wasn't simply another man. He was someone who had taken lives as well. In the meantime, Kang Jian's mother notices the cut on Kang Jian's throat, and it makes her lose the last bit of control she had over herself. Irate, she charges at Young Sik and sends him flying back and through the car's window with a single kick. This stunned everyone, including Kang Jian himself. However, his mother was more concerned about the little cut he had on his throat. Still stunned from what he witnessed, Kang Jian stood there, frozen. His mother checks on him to understand that the cut wasn't deep at all, and that he was okay. Regardless of that, she turns around and tells Woo Young and his secretary that if they dare to even touch her son again, she would really take their lives. After that, she once again turns back to a normal mother and tells Kang Jian to come with her, as she made breakfast for him. As they walked past Jang Young Sik's battered body, Kang Jian's mother assured him that she didn't take his life. She is not the kind of person who takes out people for good. This only leaves Kang Jian with more questions about her and what her real identity is. On the other hand, Woo Young was utterly broken mentally after what he witnessed. At their house, Kang Jian's mother urged him to eat up quickly, as it was almost time for breakfast. However, Kang Jian couldn't get himself to eat. Still, his mother insisted that he ate even if he didn't have the appetite for it. After all, he is a young kid who is still growing up. Not eating properly would only halt his growth. This is when Kang Jian asks her if the comrade playing his mother was also a North Korean agent. His mother once again reminds him not to speak like that. She was just his mother, and that was it. However, Kang Jian persisted in learning about her identity. He was initially shocked as to why she was there in Jeju during the bomb crisis, but now it makes sense. No way would the North send someone normal for a mission of this magnitude. His mother walks up to him and gives him a big hug. She cries and says that both she and his hand are sorry to him for making him go through all of this at his age. However, she quickly puts on a smile and agrees to tell him everything he needs to know once Steve Kong returns from his trip. The scene shifts to the school, where Kang Jian couldn't help but think about the things that happened earlier. He couldn't get his mind off it, which is why he didn't really hear anything Lee Era was saying to him. Upon noticing her, he asks her what it was, to which she says that she wants them to go on a trip together for summer vacation. He asks where, to which Lee Era says she wants to go to Guam. Dong Woo and Jin Suk were coming as well, so she decided to invite him on her behalf. Kang Jian says that he would need his parents' permission first. Lee Era doesn't understand why he would need permission because if he wants to go, he can just go. Kang Jian is left taken aback by this and wonders if this is how things work in the South. Meanwhile, Jin Suk didn't really like the sound of him coming with them. However, Lee Era considers him a member of the trip already and tells him to be prepared with a plane ticket. After she leaves, Jin Suk tells Kang Jian to not follow him around. After all, if a sparrow tries to follow a stork, it will only end up tearing its crotch. Kang Jian replies by asking if sparrows even have crotches. Jin Suk shakes his head and asks him if he doesn't even know basic proverbs despite studying abroad. Kang Jian notes down proverbs to study because of this. Annoyed, Jin Suk tells him to have fun while he can, because it won't be long before his fun days come to an end. He was going to make it so that Kang Jian would tremble in his fear. Kang Jian gets close to him, and with an intimidating look on his face, asks if he was also involved with Wu Young's plan. If so, he thinks they should have a talk about it once Wu Young comes to school. The scene then shifts to an office room which had the pictures of North Korean leaders hanging on the wall. There, the political bureau's chief expressed disappointment towards Steve Kong for showing up dressed so casually. Steve Kong tells him not to take note of that, because he is no longer Manjumgang. His old life has been over for a while now. His improper tone pisses off the bureau chief, who asks him if he was trying to threaten him. He thinks there is no reason for Steve Kong to behave this way, because he did keep his promise. This is when Steve Kong reminded him about how he got the bureau chief position. The seat itself is worth millions of dollars, and it was only possible because of Manjumgang, who put his heart and soul on the line for his country and comrades. The chief tells him that he remembers that, and that he is grateful to him for everything he has done, which is why the chief awarded him a medal after his supposed passing. However, Steve Kong was pissed off because he didn't want medals for his service. He only wanted to raise his child well and give him a normal life. The chief tries to explain that he did keep that promise and raised his son in the best facility. However, he recently heard rumors of Steve Kong taking his son back. Steve Kong goes on, he did it out of spite. He wouldn't have cared one bit if his country sold him out to the Western imperialists. He didn't even care about them wanting to assassinate him. He knows very well that it was them who tried to assassinate him, and he understands that they did it because he knows too much. This shocks the chief, as he tries to deny being involved, but Steve Kong continues on, saying he was only saved thanks to the help of Agent 11, the Shadow. This shocked the chief because he didn't expect the mother to be alive either. Anyway, what Steve Kong was getting at is that he would have accepted everything, but he can't accept the fact that his son was also trained as a special agent. Is that how the nation wants to treat him for dedicating his life? This intimidated the chief, but Steve Kong made it clear that he didn't want to escalate things further than it has already. He just wants to raise his son well in South Korea. The chief asks him why South Korea, and not a better country like the United States, but Steve didn't want him interfering in his family business. If they let them be, he promises that both him and Agent 11 would continue being martyrs for the nation, just as the narrative says. However, if they want to mess with him, the Shadow will come back, and if she does come back, the chief should know well that he would be her first target. Scared, the chief agrees. Steve Kong is pleased and informs the chief that he deposited $1 million to his Swiss account as a parting gift. The chief thanks him, and Steve Kong takes his leave, walking past a prominent North Korean soldier. Back at the school, Kang Jian was trying his best, but was failing to shake off the image of his mother, kicking young Sik back a mile. Not only that, the way her angry face contrasts heavily with her usual demeanor was also strange. He decides not to think much about this, and focus on his mission. He looks beside him to see that Wu Young was absent. This makes him wonder if he should have taken care of business with him in the morning itself. Just then, the teacher announces that a new student has transferred to their school. This naturally creates a buzz, because it isn't exactly easy to transfer into a school of this caliber. This is when the new student comes out, and it is Tomo AI. She does her introduction in Japanese, which leaves all the guys drooling for her already. However, Kang Jian was stunned. The teacher tells everyone to calm down and help her settle in. Tomo AI then starts speaking in Korean, and says her Korean name is Lee Jean. She says her father is Korean, and her mother is Japanese. Shin Yuna recognizes her, which makes one of her classmates ask her how she knows her. Yuna mentions how this girl was representing a Japanese school in the math Olympiad. Although, it is kind of unsettling how she is speaking fluent Korean now, when she only strictly spoke Japanese in Jeju. Kang Jian is left wondering why Agent 13 was here all of a sudden. Was she there for another mission? Just then, Tomo AI, or rather Lee Jean, waves at Kang Jian. She mentions that she requested to be put in the same class as Kang Jian, because the two of them were childhood friends. The guys in the class get jealous. Meanwhile, the girls don't really like her attitude. Lee Era immediately sees her as an interesting competition, while Kang Jian is left totally speechless. Some time goes by. Lee Jean stares at Kang Jian from her seat, which makes Kang Jian more anxious and wonder why she was there. Jin Suk notices the tension between them, and also gets curious. Later, during lunch break, Lee Era and her entourage come over to Kang Jian to ask him to eat lunch together with them. However, Lee Jin also wants to eat lunch together with Kang Jian. She mentions how she is new here, so she wants his guidance. Knowing the threat she possesses, Kang Jian chooses to go with Lee Jin, a decision that doesn't sit well with Lee Era. While eating, Lee Jin asks Kang Jian to eat as well. However, Kang Jian just wanted to know why she was there. Lee Jin points out how the school has a great reputation, and they offer great food too. Besides, she liked how Kang Jian has been enjoying himself at school, how he enjoys studying, eating, and making good friends. Kang Jian feels weird, because in his mind, he was just carrying out a mission. Lee Jin then tells Kang Jian to treat her well, like a comrade. The scene changes over to the hospital, where the boxer, Oh Sang-hoon, Bang Ju-hyuk are all seen in injured states. However, Jang Young-sik was more messed up than all three. The boxer asks Woo Young's secretary where Woo Young was. He mentions that Woo Young wasn't feeling good, and that he is still recovering. They ask him how Woo Young got hurt, to which he clarifies that he didn't get physically hurt, but is suffering from mental trauma instead. The secretary instructs them to rest well and get themselves checked properly to know what treatment they require. Oh Sang-hoon says he doesn't need to be treated here. The boxer then says that he would like to wait and hear what Woo Young has to say first. The secretary tells him that it's better off if they don't contact Woo Young. He tells them to forget what happened today and stay away from Woo Young. He does assure them that the company would compensate them though. However, this enrages Jang Young-sik. He asks the secretary who he was to make decisions for them. Young-sik goes full psycho and starts screaming and asking for his phone. At the school, Lee Era's friend surrounds Lee Jin after lunch and starts harassing her. Lee Jin asks why she was being bullied, to which they call her a sly fox. They ask her if she is as close with Kang Jian as she claims. They didn't like how she was acting like she had more right over him just because they probably went to kindergarten together. Lee Jin states that she and Kang Jian were closer than that. They even shared the same bed when they were kids. This pisses off the girls, who say that her childhood experiences don't count. What matters now is that Kang Jian belongs to Lee Era, the only daughter of the Samjong company. She is a huge deal. If Lee Jin wants to attend school, she shouldn't mess with Lee Era. Lee Jin asks if this person they're referring to is influential, and that maybe she should stay away from Kang Jian. The girls like her attitude, but Lee Jin quickly declares that she doesn't care about all of that. She won't be giving up on him for them. This prompts the girls to try and attack her, but they are stopped thanks to a kick that Lee Jin demonstrates to them. The sheer speed and force stuns them without even touching them. Lee Jin mentions that her mother runs a Kyokushin karate dojo in Japan. Later in the classroom, Lee Jin walks up to Lee Era and tells her that she got the greeting Lee Era set up for her. This confuses Lee Era, which makes Lee Jin understand that maybe she didn't ask those girls to bully her. Still, she declares to Lee Era that Kang Jian is hers. This baffles both Lee Era and Kang Jian. The scene changes, and we see Woo Young sitting next to the bed of his comatose father, still trembling in fear. He didn't know what to do anymore. He just knew that he was scared of Kang Jian's mother, and he fears something bad might happen to him courtesy of her. Kang Jian's mother, Agent 11, observed all of this from a nearby building. She switches her attention to another room, where Young-sik was pleading to his gangster brethren to put an end to Kang Jian's mother. He was scared too, and the severe injuries he suffered in her hands indicated to the gangsters that she wasn't anyone to scoff at. Young-sik adds to this by saying she shouldn't be underestimated because she is a woman. The gangsters promise to break her limbs and bring Agent 11 to Young-sik, but Young-sik doesn't want that. He wants them to take her life and bury her somewhere. Such was his desperation. After that, Agent 11 calls Steve Kong, who tells him that everything has gone smoothly till now. He mentions that he was in Beijing, and that his flight would land in Gimpo Airport at around 2 p.m. All in all, he was looking forward to having dinner together with them. A lack of answer from her made Steve understand that something was wrong, and so he asked her about it. She tells him that she might just need to take a few lives. This shocks Steve, but she elaborates on how these people are messing with Kang Jian, and that they're still messing with him, despite her letting them live. Steve was strictly against this, and told her that he will handle it in a different manner. If they wanted to stay in South Korea, they simply can't act on feelings like this. Distraught, Agent 11 tells Steve to come back home soon. Back at the school, the classes end, which excites Kang Jian, who couldn't wait to go back home. Lee Jin sees this and smiles. Meanwhile, Go Jin Suk talks with Han Yeju outside. Yeju congratulates him in advance, because the election was only months away and Jin Suk's father was definitely winning. Jin Suk appreciates that, but thinks that Jin Suk's father taking over probably isn't going down well at Han Yeju's household. Yeju says that they're quite excited, if anything. After all, it's not exactly easy being under so much pressure as a family, and Jin Suk will definitely understand it when the time comes. After that, Yeju begins to head out, but as she is heading out, Jin Suk notices her bodyguard, Agent Kim Hyuk. He wonders how strong the guy is, and if he would be able to take out Kang Jian. Afterwards, he puts on an evil grin as he can't wait for his father to become the president, so that he can use that influence to crush Kang Jian. Meanwhile, Kang Jian tracks Agent 13 from afar. He wonders if she is going to target Han Yeju or Go Jin Suk. Just then, Lee Jin looks back at Kang Jian, who hides himself from her. She just smiles and leaves normally afterward. Following this, Kang Jian gets on the bus with his friends and heads back home. Yuna asks Kang Jian if something was wrong, because he sure looked drained out. This is when John Yeju suggests Yuna asks Kang Jian about Lee Jin, because the nature of their relationship has been bothering Yuna for a while. Embarrassed, Yuna tries to silence her, but Yeju keeps teasing her about this. Seo Deo-jun also wasn't interested in this relationship drama, but Yeju could tell that he was a bit jealous too. Suddenly, they noticed that the traffic jam was a bit hectic today. They wonder if an accident caused this. Sure enough, it was an accident that caused it, and they could see from the bus windows that people were being carried out by medics. Among them were the gangster brothers of Young Sik. This is when we learn that this accident was caused by none other than Agent 11. As the story progresses, Kang Jian's mother asks the freshly returned Steve Kong if they are being selfish by bringing Kang Jian to this country like this. Steve Kong says that it is only natural for them, as parents, to want the absolute best for their son. In a capitalist society, this is how things go. But she points out how badly people have been attacking Kang Jian since joining this school. She can't help but wonder if they would have been better off sending their son to a more low-profile school. Steve argues that they made the right choice because their son isn't like other kids, and no matter where he was sent, he would have been attracting unwanted attention. Steve assures her that everything will be all right. He had already solved the issue in the north, so he can deal with this one too. She understands what he means, but she thinks that they should just tell Kang Jian the truth about how they are his real parents and move to another country. Steve asks her just how much she is going to tell their son about. He adds that even if they are to tell him the unfiltered truth, there is no guarantee that Kang Jian will believe them. He has only the mission on his mind, so what he needs is not the truth, but time. Time to understand that he was brainwashed by the government into doing all of this. He needs to figure that out himself. Just then, Kang Jian arrives, and his parents greet him wholeheartedly. Kang Jian was tired, but was glad to see his comrade, Man Jungang, back. However, his mother didn't appreciate the casual way the two were talking inside the house one bit. As the three of them sit down together to have lunch, Kang Jian brings up that his mother promised to tell him about the truth once his father is back. His mother says that she will, but tells him to eat up first. In that case, Kang Jian wanted to make a report first. His mother still insisted that he finish the lunch first. However, Kang Jian argues that it's more important to focus on the mission. After that, he reports about Agent 13's sudden transfer to their school and asks them how he wants him to deal with her. Man Jungang then reveals to Kang Jian that he went back to the north recently. He tells Kang Jian that his mission remains indifferent. He must not get into useless trouble and focus on working his way up to the South Korean higher echelon. His job is to continue making good friends, to study hard and not get into fights. His focus should stay on building connections. After that, his mother asks Kang Jian if this Agent 13 girl grew up together with him. Kang Jian confirms it and says that she was trained along with him. Steve Kong adds that the special unit she trained is called the Shadow Unit. Only the most elite agents are a part of the unit. They recruit kids to be in that unit based on their family history, and they train these kids to be potent weapons. Kang Jian agrees with that assessment and says that he has even been trained to serve the nation unconditionally. Steve informs him that his mother was also a part of the same unit, which makes a lot of sense to Kang Jian based on her feats until now. Steve tells Kang Jian to pay emphasis on this bit. The fact that his mother the greatest agent in the history of the Shadow Unit, has been sent on this mission speaks volumes by itself. It goes to show how much value this mission holds, so Kang Jian should focus on doing what's important. Kang Jian gets hyped up and agrees to follow the mission properly from now on. His mother tells him to eat up now that the conversation is done, and Kang Jian begins to eat enthusiastically once again. Even though the problem was solved for now, both Steve and the mother felt particularly bad for ruining these lives. Meanwhile, the chief of the intelligence agency of South Korea goes to the airport to welcome his guest. The man was none other than the chief of the CIA's East Asian branch, and he was there for business. Now, in no way could he hold back and stay put after learning Zero and Shadow have reappeared in South Korea. The South Korean chief clarifies that it is just speculation, and that nothing has been confirmed as of now. But the chief of CIA East Asia thinks that it's pretty much confirmed, because even they can't hack into South Korea's intelligence server. So, it must have been the work of Zero. The South Korean chief tells him to come along and talk with him on the way, but the CIA guy tells him that he didn't come along. This is when two special agents, a tall and peculiar-looking man, and a timid-looking girl, also come by. This shocks the South Korean chief, which makes the CIA guy understand that he must have information about these two to be acting like this. The South Korean chief questions if they really need these two to be here, to which the CIA guy reminds him of Zero always having a shadow by his side. In fact, he thinks that those two, Zhao Long and Hashikiri, might not be enough to deal with the situation. So, he will probably call up the Home Office for more support. The South Korean chief asks him if he is going to start a war. The chief of CIA East Asia makes it clear that he is willing to do so if push comes to shove. The South Korean chief reminds him that they were standing on the ground of the Republic of Korea, so they should keep in mind not to cross the limits. The CIA guy tells him that he has no idea what he is talking about. About 10 years ago, CIA East Asia was very close to catching Zero. However, that is when Shadow came and revealed their true form. What followed next can hardly be described in words. The South Korean chief says that he has heard rumors about it, to which the CIA guy asks him what he has heard about it. Did he hear that Shadow saved Zero and escaped? So, he knows nothing yet. He tells him that he will say more along the way. In the car, the CIA guy states that he was first sent to CIA East Asia after the Zero and Shadow incident. When he arrived there, he found no one. It was pure annihilation. Even the Chinese agents who cooperated with them were slaughtered without exception. When they checked for the official number of people that were slaughtered, it exceeded well over 100. The South Korean chief found this impossible to believe. But it was the truth. Anyone who had seen Zero's face, and even the slightest bit of information about him, was completely destroyed. All traces were wiped from the face of the planet, and even after 10 years of searching, they found no clue. With all the considerations, the CIA guy asks if the South Korean chief still feels that he is overreacting, putting the chief in a big dilemma. Later, at the National Intelligence Service Office, a proper meeting is held. Members included people from the South Korean Intelligence Service, the chief of CIA East Asia, Hashikiri of the Japanese department, and Zhao Long from China. The briefing begins with images of the C4 found from Jeju. The next picture shows a group picture of all the participants from the Math Olympiad. The picture had the suspect, Tomo AI, in it, but it wasn't the best quality. The CIA guy could tell from the picture that she was just a kid, and if that was all they had. The South Koreans how all of the footage from the CCTV cameras got wiped out by a hacking attack. The girl's immigration record was also different from that of regular Japanese participants. She used the name Tomo AI and represented Reiwa High School. However, that identity was an obvious fabrication. The CIA guy assumes that the girl must be one of the members from North Korea's secret unit. The South Korean chief is surprised that he knew about it. The CIA chief elaborates that he learned about them during his research of the agent named Shadow. Apparently, the unit is called the Shadow Unit. The South Korean chief also adds that the information they have is somewhat similar. The Shadow Unit was supposedly formed 30 years ago, and they use rigorous methods to train kids to make them potent spies to infiltrate countries. The CIA guy condemns their inhumane process, but adds that he wasn't there to discuss this. This is when the South Korean chief presents proof of the secret messages sent to them to tip them off about the Jeju attack. The line used to contact them is only used by field agents. It is not exactly the kind of line that can be hacked into easily, so it must have been the work of someone who was good at it. The CIA guy thinks Zero isn't the kind of guy who would do something like that, as it easily exposes his existence. The South Korean chief gets that, but he reckons Zero could have done it as a reckless last-minute move. As for why Zero might have done so, He could have done it because he needed to protect someone from the bomb attack. He links this to something interesting he noticed recently. He shows them the picture of the Taejong Group CEO who was in coma. Despite it being a middle-ranked company, the company's servers got hit by a DDoS attack, and the company took a hit as a result. It is said that the CEO went into a coma after he learned about his company taking a hit. Now, this might seem off-topic to the naked eye, but there is a factor that connects this to the Jeju incident. The son of the Taejong Group's CEO goes to the Seoul International School, one of the participating schools from the Olympiad, and the target of the incident was very obviously Han Yuju, the daughter of the president of South Korea. The CIA guy thought it didn't make much sense, but the South Korean chief thinks it is possible that Zero might have wanted to protect one of the kids present there. The CIA guy appreciates his sharp analysis, but things simply don't add up for him. Zero isn't the kind of guy to expose himself so easily. The South Korean chief explains that nothing is certain. Anyway, the CIA guy thanks them for the briefing, but makes it clear that they will be moving independently. The South Korean chief reminds him of the upcoming presidential elections and warns him not to cause any trouble. The CIA guy thinks there won't be many issues because, going off the public reaction, the next president is all but decided. The scene then shifts to Go Jin-suk's father, Go Yun-cham, who attends a big meeting. Meanwhile, at the school, the English teacher was impressed by Lee Jean and her English. She asks Lee Jean if she used to study in America, but she says that she didn't. She does add that she practiced really hard to meet up with a friend who did, though. The teacher asks if this friend is her boyfriend, perhaps, to which she says yes. This makes the teacher melt, as she enjoys some romantic drama. However, it embarrassed Kang Jian and pissed off Lee Era. During lunch, Lee Era walks up to Kang Jian and asks if he will come to Guam with her or not. Kang Jian says that he forgot to ask his parents for permission, but suddenly, Lee Jean steps in. She asks if only the two of them were going to Guam together. Lee Era thinks that is ridiculous and clarifies that she is going with other classmates too. Hearing this, Lee Jean says she will also tag along, creating an intense stare down between the two girls, while Kang Jian feels awkward. Lee Era replies by telling her that she won't be going with anyone who wants to go. She especially wouldn't want to go with bullies who try to pick on girls weaker than them. Lee Jean asks her if she really thinks that she was the one who bullied her friends. Lee Era notices her friends acting weird upon hearing this, and understands that they were the ones who started it. Still, she makes it abundantly clear that she wouldn't be going on a trip with someone she does not know. This upsets Lee Jean, so she hugs Kang Jian and declares that if she can't go, neither will Kang Jian. After all, Kang Jian won't go anywhere where she is not allowed. This upsets Lee Era, who walks away, telling Kang Jian that he did not need to come. Meanwhile, Kang Jian was still having a hard time processing what was happening and why it was happening. Still, he knew that he needed to focus on his mission, and in his mission, Lee Era is his #1 target. Keeping that in mind, he states that he wants to go with her. Lee Era looks back and smiles warmly, happy knowing that he would come. Meanwhile, Lee Jean was getting pissed off because the girls were making it hard for her, whereas Kang Jian didn't understand why Lee Jean was behaving like this. Later that afternoon, Kang Jian went to the rooftop of their school building to check on Han Yuju, whose class was in a different building. He knows for sure that Lee Jin's target, just like in Jeju, is still Han Yuju, so he must keep an eye on her. As he observes Han Yuju from afar, he notices Lee Jean approaching her from behind while having an evil smile on her face. This worries Kang Jian, as he wonders how she had gotten inside the third year's building. More importantly, he needed to save Han Yuju, so he decided to jump in. But before he could do that, Agent Kim Hyuk intervenes and tells Lee Jean to stop. Startled, Han Yuju asks him who the girl was. Lee Jean grins before claiming to be Kim Hyuk's sister. She states that she recently started living with him. Han Yuju smiles and says that she had no idea that her bodyguard's sister was going to the same school as her. Lee Jean formally introduces herself to Han Yuju before Kim Hyuk reminds her that he was on duty and that he doesn't want her to do this again. They go their own way, as Yuju praises her bodyguard for his strict principles. Watching this, Kang Jian is left stunned. He recalls seeing the guy earlier, too. Not once could he sense him being an agent working against Yuju. After school, Kang Jian comes back home, where his parents greet him warmly as usual, but Kang Jian was still stressed out over what was happening. They asked him if anything was wrong, and for a moment Kang Jian considered telling them, but he thought the time wasn't right, so he told them it was nothing. His mother informs him that she bought expensive beef for him, the kind of Korean beef he has only ever heard of. His father tells him he can eat it every day if he wants to. This all made Kang Jian question why they were being so relaxed. Meanwhile, Lee Jin was at her house when suddenly, Agent Kim Hyuk arrived there. Lee Jin tries to play along with the siblings' act, but Kim Hyuk grabs her by the throat and starts choking her. He states that it took him 15 years for him to get where he was, so he would have taken Lee Jin's life today for messing with his mission, but he is sparing her because of the party's order. Lee Jin smirks and points out how Kim Hyuk has been living a great life in South Korea, so she wonders if the party's order seems absurd to him now. This only angers him more, as he chokes her more viciously for doubting his loyalty. He adds that South Korea is on the verge of falling, so the end of his mission is just around the corner. Just then, the old North Korean agent enters the room and tells them to calm down. Agent Hyuk quickly lets go of Lee Jin and formally greets Cheon Ji-san. Overwhelmed, Lee Jin asks if the two of them knew each other. Cheon Ji-san says that it was him who put Agent Hyuk inside the submarine to South Korea. It felt like yesterday, but a lot of time had already passed since. Afterwards, Cheon Ji-san asks Kim Hyuk if it was hard for him to do what he has done so far in South Korea. Kim Hyuk says he was simply doing his job for the country. Ji-san sees his loyalty to be perfect and exactly what they need in a soldier. He tells Kim Hyuk to come sit down with them, but Kim Hyuk says he is fine standing. Cheon Ji-san then informs him of the newest order from the leader himself, the order to assassinate an enemy of their country, an order to assassinate the traitor known as Manhwa. Judging off his reaction, Ji-san could tell that Kim Hyuk didn't know who Manhwa was. Ji-san introduces Manhwa as perhaps the greatest talent to ever come out of the Democratic Republic. At one point, he was considered the greatest hacker in the world. In foreign countries, he is often referred to as Zero. Hearing this, Agent Hyuk understands who he was referring to. Ji-san adds that it was bad enough for him to get away with so much information and assets, but he also helped ruin the Jeju operation for them. Not only that, he has been dealing with the political bureau who directly oppose the main regime. He has become a disgrace to the nation, and such a person can't be let off scotch-free. From information he has gathered, they've learned that one of Manhwa's relatives goes to Seoul International School. The kid is also a part of the plan, so the plan is to execute the entire family at once. Worried, Lee Jin asks if it is really necessary for them to take out the son as well. Ji-san gives her a scary look and asks her if she was looking to defy the nation's order. Just then, Agent Kim Hyuk intervenes and says that he will do it. He was going to take Manhwa and his family down. He took the duty upon himself because it isn't easy to assassinate people in South Korea. Ji-san tells him to first bring Manhwa to him before taking his life, because he possesses a lot of information and assets which they need to learn first. Kim Hyuk obliges. So, Cheon Ji-san tells the two of them to get along, as they are both from the same unit and on the same mission before swiftly taking his leave. Meanwhile, Kang Jian was lying on his bed, wondering what the real motivations behind Lee Jin's mission were. From what he could tell, he is targeting Han Yuju. However, he doesn't understand how Lee Jin got acquainted with Yuju's bodyguard. He gets up from his bed and contemplates whether or not he should ask Steve Kong for help. But he doesn't want to cause unnecessary trouble to them, so he refrains from doing so. That being said, he did need to do something about it. He then notices that his mother left breakfast for him on the table, and left a note telling him that they were to run an errand. Meanwhile, Cheon Ji-san was making his way out of Kim Hyuk's house. He calls a taxi and tells the driver to take him to the Pyeongtaek port. The driver says that he should have called a Kakabot taxi if he wanted to go that far. Ji-san tells him not to worry and promises to pay him generously. This is when the driver reveals himself to be Steve Kong, or rather, Manhwa. This stuns Ji-san, and he tries to pull out a gun on Manhwa. But before he can do so, he spots the shadow, Kang Jian's mother, standing outside. She kicks the window open and hits Ji-san, stopping him. Ji-san tries to resist again, but the shadow strikes him again, shutting him up. Pissed off, she expresses her will to take his life right then and there. But Steve tells her not to go overboard and proceeds to drive the car off from there. Following this, they take him to a confined room and lock him down to a chair. Upon waking up, Ji-san sees Manhwa sitting in front of him. Manhwa proceeded to blurt out every bit of information he knew about Ji-san, which included his real name, Lee Gil-soo, and his position in the North Korean hierarchy. He also adds that he is a 74-year-old man. So, what Manhwa wanted to ask him was what he was doing there. Was he looking for someone? In reply, Ji-san just expresses his shock of knowing that the shadow was alive. Man Jungang adds that he barely managed to stop her from taking Ji-san's life. He heard that Ji-san had done some unthinkable things to his wife. So his question to the old man was, did he want to keep on living? Ji-san asked him if he had any idea what he was even doing. Man Jungang says that he doesn't ask much of it. If he wanted to live, he just had to refrain from messing with him and his family. Ji-san says that if they let a traitor and reactionary like Man Jungang live, then no one would remain loyal to the party. So he thinks Man Jungang should just let him go and await punishment from the government. Man Jungang gets confused by Ji-san calling him a traitor. Ji-san elaborates that Man Jungang was the guy who went to the Americans and sold off assets of the country to them. Man Jungang reveals that the one who sold him to the Americans was their dear nation leader himself. Ji-san didn't believe him. Man Jungang went on, adding that he was set to negotiate with the Americans on the condition that he hands over the right of being zero. If he didn't believe him, he could go and ask Kim Dal-young of the political bureau about it. He was the one who hand-delivered Jungang to the Americans. Although it was highly unlikely that Ji-san would make it out alive from here to go and inquire for himself. Ji-san asks Jungang just what he wants from him. This is when Jungang reveals that he knows Jo Tae-san, the 41-year-old, who works at the Samjong Group as a researcher. He knows Lee Yong-woo, 41, the senior secretary of civil affairs at the Blue House. He is also highly likely to become an elected House member in the upcoming elections. Ji-san is shocked to know that Jungang was aware of the North Korean agents planted in South Korea. Jungang adds that the first cohort of agents have settled in quite well. He also knows about Agent Kim Hyuk, who has somehow managed to gain approval from the National Intelligence Service. And there is also the second cohort, who are currently working to settle in as well. If he wanted, Jungang could investigate and learn about anything he wanted. He can also pass the information to the South Korean government whenever he wants. Frustrated, Ji-san tells him to do what he wants. Jungang continues on, saying that if he wanted, he could load up missiles on a cargo ship and head towards Arabia before rerouting to Africa. It would take them years to even track him down. From there, he could lock up the nuclear warheads of the country at will, and if he locks them up, he doubts anyone could unlock them. And these things are only a fraction of the stuff he is capable of. He reiterates that all he wants is to have peace. If they don't touch him and his family, he will stay put. Ji-san replies saying that he doesn't have the authority to make decisions. Man Jungang states that the CIA East Asia's chief was also here along with his guys. Man Jungang can hand over all the information to them. Jungang would definitely enjoy taking Ji-san's life and handing over the information to them, but he won't do it. It's because doing so would require him to go into hiding again. Whenever he does something like this, he has to go into hiding, and he doesn't want that. So he is willing to give them one last chance. He would stay put in exchange for the safety of himself and his family. Ji-san agrees to it and says that he would pass on this message to the ruling party. Jungang then brings up Agent 13, Lee Jin. He asks Ji-san to let her be, because Jungang's son worries about her a lot. He is sure that Ji-san at least has the authority to change her orders. Ji-san obliges. However, when it was time to let him go, Man Jungang stated that he would need to be put to sleep first. Afterwards, he can wake up in the Pyeongtaek port, just as he had wanted. So, the shadow injects him with sedatives on the neck from behind and puts him to sleep. However, it didn't seem like either of them enjoyed doing this much to Ji-san. Later that day, Kang Jian was heading towards school, but he didn't find any of his friends. Just then, Han Yuju spots him from her car and asks him if he was going to school too. She subsequently asks him if he was going to Guam on a trip with his classmates. Lee Era contacted her to come along, and she is considering going herself as well. Kang Jian thinks that's a good thing as Yuju bade farewell and left. But before that, Agent Hyuk gives Kang Jian a stern look. After she leaves, Kang Jian's friends join up with him. Shin Yoon-ah asks him if he was just talking to Han Yuju of the third year. Kang Jian admits that he was. She asks him what they were talking about, to which Kang Jian explains the whole Guam situation to her. She already knew about it, as Lee Era's friends couldn't stop blabbering about it. Shin Yoon-ah feels a bit jealous that Kang Jian is going out with them, and she adds that she can probably tag along if she nags her parents about it. Kang Jian asks her if he should talk to Lee Era about taking her along, but Yoon-ah tells him not to. She wanted to focus on studying instead and reclaim the first spot back from Kang Jian. Seeing them interact so cutely, Seo Deo-jun can't help but feel jealous because he felt like Yoon-ah liked Kang Jian. As they all headed towards school together, Kang Jian felt more relaxed and fresh. Just then, an explosion occurs in their school building, shocking everyone. As everyone is left traumatized by this, Li Jin approaches Kang Jian and assures him that no one's life was harmed. She further adds that she had to make the explosion to keep him alive. Kang Jian asks her if she had gone insane. Li Jin says that the explosion happened in an empty science lab. It will come off as a short circuit which caused a fire to break out, which was later amplified by several chemicals exploding and mixing together. So, she won't be blamed for anything. Furthermore, she had done this to protect him. She advises him to stay alert before walking away from there. As chaos breaks out around the school, Kang Jian's friends ask him if he was okay, because he seemed more shaken up than the rest. They pondered what to do next. Should they head back home? Or should they go to their classrooms as they would have? John Yeju suggests they stay put for a while and observe what happens. Their teachers would eventually tell them what to do and what to not. Yuna agrees with what Yeju suggested, and Kang Jian did too. However, in his mind, Kang Jian was still wondering about what Li Jin meant when she said that she was doing this to protect him. Later, inside the classroom, Kang Jian stares outside to see the Korean SWAT team arriving at the school. Kim Hyuk and the NIS chief were talking to each other as well. Kang Jian looks around to see that Jin Suk's seat was empty. Meanwhile, the girls were talking about how this looked like a terrorist attack. It looked like a bomb to them rather than a normal fire explosion. They questioned if they really had to continue school like this, especially considering Jin Suk and Lee Era didn't even show up because of this. However, it is obvious that they would not, because people like them are the kind to be targeted by terrorists as compared to commoners like them. Just then, the teacher arrives and announces that the explosion earlier has been investigated, and fortunately, it is not a terrorist bombing. They've classified it as an electrical explosion, which was further heightened by the mixing of chemicals in the science lab. That being said, the NIS has still asked for today and tomorrow to investigate the matter, so the classes will be called off. Everyone starts celebrating hearing this, whereas Kang Jian was still stuck on why she was doing this to save him. The teacher then makes sure to tell them that the semester final exams would continue as first planned, so it will happen on the day after tomorrow. This brings everyone back down to earth. In the meantime, Kang Jian stares outside again, and his eyes suddenly meet with Kim Hyuk's. They both stare at each other intensely, before Kang Jian leaves the classroom. Shin Yuna notices this and points out to her friends how Kang Jian has been acting a bit weird since the explosion happened. Seo Deo Jun asks if they are really supposed to joke around when a literal explosion occurs in front of them a few moments ago. Shin Yuna asks Seo Deo Jun why he has been behaving rudely with her for a few days now, but Deo Jun dodges it and claims to know nothing about. John Yeju feels the rising tension and steps in between them and says how they still have time since their academy classes begin. Until then, they were free, so she thought they could do something fun during their free time. She suggests various activities like karaoke and other stuff, but none of them work. Yuna says that she would much rather go to the academy early and study to prepare for the exams. Deo Jun also thinks they should study now and play around during their vacation. As they both leave, John Yeju sighs as she feels exhausted between the two of her friends. Meanwhile, Kang Jian gets outside to leave, but before leaving, he once again looks at Kim Hyuk, who was having a conversion with the NIS chief even now. Kang Jian decides to keep walking on though, but suddenly, he notices the CIA East Asia chief arriving at the school along with Zhao Long and Hashikiri. As they pass by each other, they both look at each other with suspicion. Suddenly, the CIA guy calls out to Kang Jian in English, telling him to wait. Kang Jian responds back in English, asking him what it was. The guy is taken aback by his American English accent, but Kang Jian wanted to know why he had stopped him. He mentions that he had exams coming up in a couple of days, and that he was in a hurry to go and study. The CIA guy responds to this by saying he can't stop a student looking to study and tells Kang Jian to go. After Kang Jian leaves, the CIA guy asks Hashikiri if he was one of the guys in their suspicion list. She confirms it, saying Kang Jian is one of their main targets. He is the son of Steve Kang, the CEO of 11 Coins. The CIA guy asks for their record, to which Hashikiri says that both Steve Kong and 11 Coins have clean records. Still, the CIA guy wanted the headquarters to investigate them a bit more before coming to a verdict. He was also keen to go and see what happened at the school. Even though it wasn't probably an attack from zero, they still needed to go. Hashikiri agreed, as an attack on a school with the children of the current and next president surely asks for investigation. However, Zhao Long states that he will go and follow Kang Jian instead. He points out Kang Jian not getting scared by looking at his face to be the reason. Hashikiri agrees because Zhao Long does have an ugly face. That being said, she also thinks remained too calm under pressure. The CIA guy says that his suspicion towards Kang Jian has increased, but tells them to not forget that their main target here isn't Kang Jian, but someone else. As time goes by, Zhao Long follows Kang Jian all the way to the bus stop. Kang Jian notices this and wonders why the guy was following him. He also didn't know how to act in that situation. Just then, Shin Yun-ah also comes to the bus stop to meet up with Kang Jian. However, she notices Zhao Long and greets him, despite being scared of him. Regardless, Yun-ah asked Kang Jian to join her at the academy to study together. She mentions that students can use the academy's study room early during their exam period, and that she likes studying with Kang Jian. The bus arrives at that moment, and the two of them get on it. Zhao Long also follows them in. There, Yun-ah asks Kang Jian if he doesn't want to go. She knows that it is some much needed free time for them, but she reckoned it was no time to slack off considering the exams were on the horizon. Kang Jian tells her that he wants to go with her and study together. This makes her very happy, as she says that she expected him to come as well. As the two of them talked and smiled at each other, Zhao Long observed a rather normal and calm version for Kang Jian. After they get off the bus, Kang Jian tells Yun-ah to go on ahead and says that he will be joining her soon. Yun-ah reluctantly agrees, leaving Kang Jian alone with Zhao Long. Kang Jian immediately asks Zhao Long why he was following him. Surprised, Zhao Long asks him if he wasn't afraid of him. Kang Jian said he had no reason to be afraid. Taken aback, Zhao Long mentions that he finds it strange how Kang Jian has fluent English, and his Chinese is on the native level too. Kang Jian says that it's just a result of going to many international schools and making a lot of friends, none of which was Zhao Long's business, of course. Zhao Long finds him really interesting and asks him if his name was Kang Jian. This shocks Kang Jian, who asks Zhao Long how he knows his name, but Zhao Long finds his fearlessness quite abnormal. Most kids his age would be scared being in a situation like this. However, Kang Jian seemingly had infinite courage. He really came off as an agent to Zhao Long, but he wondered if Kang Jian was on the Chinese side or not. After that, Zhao Long says that there was no point in spinning around it. He already knew who Kang Jian was, where he came from, and what he was. Kang Jian shrugs and says that he has no idea what he is talking about. Right then, the police arrive at the scene, thanks to some quick thinking from Shin Yun-ah, who had reported Zhao Long to them. Kang Jian stood proudly and told Zhao Long that they were in the Republic of Korea, and this is how they operate here. Shin Yun-ah comes forward and says that she was the one who reported the guy. Zhao Long gives her the stare, but now that the police were here, she wasn't scared. She tells the police that he was a suspicious man following them for no reason. The police ask Zhao Long for his identity card, but Zhao Long lies about being American. Yun-ah points that out as further reason to find him suspicious, because he very clearly didn't look American. The police ask Zhao Long for his passport and start interrogating him when Yun-ah asks for her and Kang Jian's leave, because they have to study for their exams. The two of them go away from there. Kang Jian thanks Yun-ah for helping him out, but she says it's fine, and that she had to help him as a friend. The word friend strikes Kang Jian hard, as he wonders if there's truth to it. Right then, Kang Jian stops and tells Yun-ah that she would need to study alone for the exams. That is because he had to go home immediately. Yun-ah was okay with that, but wondered if Kang Jian was really fine. Kang Jian looked back at her and smiled, telling her he was fine and wished her good luck for studying. Kang Jian subsequently gets on a taxi and goes home. His mind is still stuck on Zhao Long knowing his name. Later, Kang Jian arrives at the Banpo Blue Tower. He looks around to check if he was being followed before entering the building. Even inside, he made sure to look around and check if he was being tailed before going inside his house. Upon entering, he meets both of his parents. His mother asks Kang Jian why he was back so soon, considering he has exams coming up really soon. Kang Jian tells her that something came up and tells them that he needs to tell them something as his comrade. Kang Jian informs them about the explosion at the school earlier today, which stuns both of them. But more importantly, Kang Jian doubted that his identity was exposed already. Later, as Kang Jian sat with his mother, Steve Kang went to his room and started investigating the CCTV footage from all over the area and saw what had happened. He checks out the NIS chief and the CIA guys through clips, before hacking into CIA East Asia's database and getting information on the chief, Hashikiri, and Zhao Long. Afterwards, Steve comes out and says that those CIA agents were up to something. He hands over some files to his wife before telling Kang Jian to not worry. After all, the American agents weren't after him. They were after Steve Kong and his wife. So, to tackle that, they just need to go underground for a bit until everything is resolved. He insinuates that they can't use their usual method here, because that would make Kang Jian's school life a mess, much to the mother's disappointment. So, Steve tells Kang Jian that he probably needs to live alone for the next few months. Kang Jian says there is no big deal in getting his identity exposed, and that they didn't need to hide themselves for him. But Steve reassures him that his identity wasn't, in fact, exposed, so he didn't need to worry. The American agents were just talking a wild guess, and that was that. After much deliberation, Kang Jian agrees hesitantly. The next day, Steve and the mother get ready to leave. Kang Jian asks if they really have to leave like this, to which Steve says yes. He tells Kang Jian to enjoy his alone time and tells the mother not to worry, as he was already a grown-up. Kang Jian asks him where they were headed, to which he says Africa. That is because Kang Jian's mother always wanted to go to Africa and see a real lion, or perhaps she just wants to fight a lion. Somehow, Kang Jian could actually picture that. And so they were off. As they leave, Kang Jian gets a bit overwhelmed, but he quickly tries to regain focus on the mission. He goes back inside, only to find that his mother took out the time to prepare food for him, even amidst such a hurry. Steve also left him with a platinum card as a gift, and it had no spending cap. Kang Jian smiles, as he begins to miss his parents right away. Them not being in the house made him realize just how spacious it was. But he knew that he couldn't be focusing on that, and instead changed his mind back to the mission, which was to infiltrate South Korea's high class. Determined to achieve his goals, Kang Jian spends hours and hours studying diligently to prepare for the exams. Eventually, he notices someone on his doorstep, so he goes over to open up. He sees from the camera that it was Agent Kim Hyuk, which made him wonder why he was there. Still, he opened up the door. Kim Hyuk asks where his father was, to which Kang Jian asks him why he was looking for him. Agent Hyuk says he has business with him, so Kang Jian tells him that his father went off on a business trip earlier. Kang Jian tells him to leave before closing the door on him, but Kim Hyuk stops the door and asks to come inside. Kang Jian very hesitantly allows him to, but him entering with his shoes on definitely irked Kang Jian more than it should. Kim Hyuk explored the house, noting how big it was and all. Kim Hyuk subsequently states that he started in an orphanage, and crawled all the way up to this level. Kang Jian asks him what he means, to which he says that he knew exactly what Kim Hyuk was talking about. Kang Jian tells him to just take his shoes off first. Kim Hyuk continues on, saying that he was given the mission to take the lives of Manhwa and his family. However, suddenly the mission has been revoked and his workplace got bombed today. It all points out towards one thing, and that's why he was there. He adds that he spent 20 years working up to this, and not a single day was spent lousily. Kang Jian asks him what kind of nonsense he was even talking about. Kim Hyuk asks Kang Jian where Manhwa was, to which Kang Jian says that he doesn't even know who that is. This prompts Kim Hyuk to attack him, but Kang Jian manages to step aside from the strike. Kim Hyuk tells him that he is better than her. Kang Jian asks him what he was even doing and threatens to call the police on him. Kim Hyuk brings up Agent 13, and says he knows about their connection too. This shocks Kang Jian, which allows Kim Hyuk to go for a spinning kick. However, Kim Hyuk doesn't connect with the kick, and he notices that his shoe was missing too. Turns out, Kang Jian had stopped the kick and removed the shoe for him because he wasn't taking them off himself. Kim Hyuk praises him for being not bad and gives him one more opportunity to speak out about Manhwa's whereabouts. Kang Jian tells him to take his other show off, so Kim Hyuk goes for an axe kick and breaks the table because Kang Jian managed to evade it as well. Following this, Kim Hyuk drew out his knife and proceeded to attack Kang Jian with it. The strikes were quick and precise, so Kang Jian had to work his hardest to avoid them. Kim Hyuk eventually tried to stab him from the top down, and Kang Jian had the opportunity to avoid it too. But avoiding him would cause the sofa his father bought to be damaged by the knife, so Kang Jian ends up taking a stab to his shoulder. He says that the sofa is something that his father really cherishes. Kim Hyuk finds calling Manhwa father to be weird, because shadow agents like them don't have any family. In turn, Kang Jian gives him one last warning. He tells him to leave and buy them an appropriate replacement for the table. Kim Hyuk asks him if he even understands the situation he was in, and Kang Jian responds to this by hitting Kim Hyuk with a ridiculously strong punch to the ribs. This stuns Kim Hyuk. The pain makes him let go of the knife and allows Kang Jian to pick him up and hurl him all the way across the room. Kang Jian subsequently takes the knife out of his shoulder and tells Kim Hyuk to leave while he is still living. However, Kim Hyuk pulls a gun on Kang Jian in response. Kang Jian asks Kim Hyuk if he has the guts to use the gun. Kim Hyuk fires 2 shots at the window to show him that he won't be afraid of taking him out. Kang Jian looked at Kim Hyuk and realized that he was standing at the same place his mom usually stands while cooking. This angered him. As Kim Hyuk fired at Kang Jian, he managed to evade it and threw the knife at Kim Hyuk. Despite dodging, Kim Hyuk is taken aback by the sudden attack, and Kang Jian takes advantage of that by getting closer and kicking the gun away from his hand. Kang Jian follows it up with a kick to Kim Hyuk's face, knocking him out. The next time Kim Hyuk wakes up, he realizes that he had a broken nose and was sitting on Kang Jian's couch. He sees Kang Jian getting the house renovated after the damage that was caused by him, and he pays the workers using Kim Hyuk's credit card. After they leave, Kang Jian returns the card and the wallet back to Kim Hyuk, and also shows Kim Hyuk the gun he had confiscated from him. Kim Hyuk tries to attack Kang Jian and snatch back the gun, but Kang Jian takes it out and aims it at Kim Hyuk, stopping him on the spot. Kang Jian reminds him that he had already spared him once already. However, he didn't want to keep the gun, so he gave it back to Kim Hyuk. Surprised, Kim Hyuk asked him what he was doing. Kang Jian says that South Korea isn't the kind of country where a student can carry a gun nonchalantly. Kang Jian then sits down and calls for a proper conversation with Agent Kim Hyuk. He states how Kim Hyuk had been working as Han Yuju's bodyguard until now. So, why was he suddenly looking for Man Jumgang? The scene then moves a few days into the future, on the day of their final exam of the term. The teacher tells them to pull through this exam, as they were going to get a long holiday to follow it up. Shin Yoon-ah was hyped, and so was Kang Jian. He looked around to see that everyone, including Lee Era, Go Jin-suk and Hwang Woo-young, have settled back into their normal selves. However, that didn't mean that they didn't have problems to deal with because Lee Jin was still around. However, he didn't have time to focus on that. For now, he needed to focus on the exam. After the exam, Shin Yoon-ah could tell Kang Jian did well in the exams just by looking at his face. Kang Jian brushes it off as pure luck, but Yoon-ah gets it. She tells him to enjoy his vacation and promises to defeat him in the next term. After that, Lee Era asks Kang Jian if he has bought a plane ticket for their trip yet. Kang Jian says he has, which makes Jin-suk laugh. Kang Jian wonders why Jin-suk insists on being a pain in the butt, but Jin-suk states that he is looking forward to the trip. Lee Era is also excited, because Go Jin-suk, Jang Dong-woo and Han Yuju were also coming. And just like that, Kang Jian's first semester as a school student in South Korea came to an end. He spent his off days working out, studying hard, researching on topics, and working on his martial arts until it was finally day to go on the trip. Kang Jian arrives at Incheon Airport, all dressed up and ready to go. He is greeted by Lee Era, but he also takes notice of Jin-suk bringing his bodyguard along for the trip. The bodyguard was there because Jin-suk's father ordered him to. Meanwhile, Han Yuju also arrives, but she comes with her bodyguard, Kim Hyuk as well. But more surprisingly, she brings along Lee Jin. This stuns both Lee Era and Kang Jian, but Lee Jin explains that she tagged along because her cousin, Kim Hyuk, was also coming. Han Yuju says that it shouldn't be a bother because Lee Jin is their classmate. However, Lee Era wasn't so pleased about it. Meanwhile, it is also seen that Zhao Long and Hashikiri were also keeping a tail on them. Upon arriving in Guam, they took a yacht to their resort. At the resort, Lee Era's manager welcomes them. Han Yuju, amazed, mentions that the place was too expensive for a student trip. Lee Era thinks that's the least her father can do for her trip with her brand new friends. This was to be expected, as she is the daughter of the Samjong group after all. Kang Jian looks around to check out the place, and he can't help but be amazed. The manager then adds that there are other guests here too, but Lee Era's father made sure to get a private accommodation for them. He tells them that the main building is for everyone to gather for lunch, while everyone gets their own separate lodges to use as rooms in the middle of the sea. This cheers up everyone, and Jin-suk says that the setup was quite good. Dong-woo also praises Lee Era for preparing such an interesting resort for them. Lee Era shows Kang Jian his room, which is the lodge on the leftmost side, whereas Lee Jin's room was on the totally opposite side. She set it up like this on purpose but pretends otherwise. However, Lee Jin smiles it off, annoying Lee Era even more. Afterwards, the three girls go off together to check out the room, while the bodyguards discuss the situation at hand. Lee Era's manager tells them that they don't need to worry much, because Guam is a United States territory. They also have guards stationed outside the area, protecting the resort. They also don't need to do background searches on the other guests here, because the place is very expensive, and only elite people can stay there. The bodyguards' rooms were in the same building as Lee Era's manager, so he just tells them to treat this like a holiday for them too. Meanwhile, Kang Jian was still in awe of the place around him. It was so different from the world he always imagined. The place was truly beautiful. Just then, Lee Era's manager walks up to him and mentions that he heard Kang Jian top the class yet again this semester. He informs Kang Jian of the chairman wanting to have a meal with him sometime. This stuns Kang Jian, as it meant that the chairman of Samjong wanted to talk to him. The manager further adds that Lee Era talks about him every day. This was a bit surprising for Kang Jian, but he was still happy that he was getting closer to the Samjong chairman. It was a huge victory for him in his mission. Afterwards, Kang Jian goes to visit his lodge, and he is genuinely surprised to see that he was getting such a luxurious place all to himself. As he goes to the veranda and takes a look at the view around him, he thinks about how he never even dreamt of stepping foot in such a place. Just then, Dong Wu tells Kang Jian that everyone was getting ready to swim, so he should go and get ready too. Kang Jian smiles at him as he realizes that it was time for that. He goes inside to get changed. However, his body was full of scars and wounds which would scare anyone off. So, as the other guys and girls played outside wearing normal swimming outfits, Kang Jian showed up wearing a rash guard and shorts. This ticked off everyone, especially one of Lee Era's friends, who wanted to see Kang Jian's body. She kept on pressing him, but Kang Jian wouldn't budge. Eventually, Lee Era tells her not to make him uncomfortable. Lee Era shows up alongside Han Yuju, both wearing attractive bikinis. They obviously draw the attention of everyone, as everyone praises both of their beauties. Not too long after, Lee Jin shows up. While she wore a regular bikini bottom, she, like Kang Jian, showed up with a rash guard as the top of her choice. This genuinely appalled everyone, as they were in Guam, where it's genuinely considered okay to get tanned. It also made them question why those two were dressed up like that. Little did they know that those two, despite being their age, didn't live a life as normal as theirs. Their bodies were covered with permanent scars. Despite that, everyone has fun playing in the water. Lee Jin and Kang Jian watch them, before Lee Jin points out that kids like them play in the water for fun, whereas kids like her and Kang Jian had to learn how to dive to survive. Kang Jian asks her what her motivations were, and why she came all the way there. Lee Jin tells him to beat her in a swimming race in order to learn about the content of her mission. She dives into the water, followed by Kang Jian also joining her. Meanwhile, the bodyguards were watching the kids play from afar, when suddenly they noticed the arrival of Xiaolong and Hashikiri. Later, the kids get back from swimming and begin to have lunch together. They enjoy the best quality seafood. Kang Jian was sitting alone at first, but he was soon joined by Lee Jin. Right afterwards, Zhang Dongwu also comes in and asks to sit with them. Lee Jin welcomes him warmly, and Dongwu begins to introduce himself. Lee Jin says she already knows him from back in Jeju Island, and butters him up by saying it's hard to forget a cute guy like him. As the three of them talked, Go Jin-suk also came in and joined them casually. He asked if Kang Jian and Lee Jin had learned to swim together in Japan as kids, because they do swim quite well. Lee Jin butters him too by calling him smart for being able to deduce. Go Jin-suk gets cocky. He says that it's not a big deal to be able to deduce that because they're childhood friends. Lee Era chimes in and mocks Jin-suk for boasting about something that he, himself, thinks is obvious. Still, Lee Jin praises Jin-suk for his bluntness. She asks him if he would like to join them for snorkeling next time. Jin-suk says that he might consider it if she requests it nicely. Lee Jin does so. Lee Jin also suggests that they can go scuba diving together, which shocks Jin-suk. She also adds that Kang Jian can scuba dive too, and that the two of them used to dive very deep as kids. This reminds Kang Jian of the traumatic training he endured as a kid, where they would be thrown deep into the water and had to swim up. Naturally, it upsets him, and Dongwu asks him if anything was wrong, but Kang Jian denies it. Following this, Han Yuju asks Lee Jin what level of certification she and Kang Jian have in scuba diving. Lee Jin says that Kang Jian learned from his father, so she doubts he has a formal certification, and Lee Jin has advanced certification. This impresses Yuju, who herself only has the open water certificate. She proposes to Lee Jin to scuba dive with her, but Kang Jian intervenes to suggest that they all should stick together and do things all of them can do instead of hanging out separately. Kang Jian did this because he can't let Han Yuju hang out with Li Jin alone without learning what her true motivations are. Just then, Li Era's manager comes and tells everyone that they've prepared a campfire at the beach for after dinner. Li Era likes the timing, and she can't help but look at Kang Jian with love in her eyes. Li Jin also notices this, and it makes her smirk smugly. Just as planned, they go to the beach to enjoy the campfire after dinner. As the kids have fun, Go Jin Suk's bodyguard, Agent Han, and Han Yuju's bodyguard, Agent Kim Hyuk, have a conversation. Kim Hyuk brings up Agent Han's past as a black for the NIS. Agent Han says all of that is in the past, and that he is currently stuck with babysitting a privileged brat. Kim Hyuk says it's not like that, because Agent Han was apparently recommended to the Liberal Party leader by the director of the NIS. He serves the man who will become the president of the country, which will make him a Secret Service member. Agent Han also brings up Kim Hyuk's recent interaction with the NIS and asks him why he bothers doing that when he is a member of the Secret Service. Kim Hyuk says that he wants to serve the nation because that's his dream. That being said, Kim Hyuk was more interested in the fact that Agent Han was going to become a Secret Service member. He states that the job is not as easy as it looks. He did have it comparatively easier though because Han Yuju is a nice girl. However, Agent Han makes it clear that he will quit if Go Yun-cham wins the election. He doesn't think a man like him, who betrayed the country for his personal gains, can live off the state's money. Furthermore, he can't imagine himself cleaning up after Go Jin Suk's mistakes, so quitting seems like the much better option to him. Meanwhile, Xiaolong and Hashikiri observe the campfire from the main resort. Hashikiri asks if it was really necessary for them to come all the way here. Xiaolong says his intuition is certain. Because Xiaolong's intuition had saved their lives before, Hashikiri followed him all the way to Guam. That being said, she wonders if Kang Jian is really that dangerous. Xiaolong says yes. Hashikiri further questions if he is certain that Kang Jian is connected to Zero, because none of the intelligence reports supports his claims. Xiaolong asks if she really thinks that intelligence reports can track down Zero. He is the kind of guy who can appear anywhere at any time. Hashikiri says she will just go along with his intuition for now. But what are they going to do next? Xiaolong suggests they wait for a bigger fish to show up and set the stage. He states that the soon-to-be president and the economic president are going to hold a meeting here soon. He plans on using the kids as leverage to set up what they want. He plans on taking the kids hostage, which will definitely leave Zero with no choice but to show himself. Hashikiri is happy to go along with the idea, and states that she also finds a few of the kids very interesting.